We're live. We
We're
are
live.
live. What's
We're
up,
live.
everybody? We're starting a little bit early today. First of all, welcome to Status Coup. I am Ron Placone.
And I'm Tina-Desiree Berg. Welcome, welcome.
We have a crazy show today, folks. And you know what? I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but I just got to say, when we say things, and when we say things like this is why independent media has to exist to fill the void that corporate media is leaving, boy, is this a textbook example of it. Like, oh my God, like this is unreal. So today's show is mainly going to be focused on East Palestine, Ohio,
Right.
because there is so much stuff being neglected by the corporate media. There's stuff deliberately being omitted. We're going to talk about a lot of that, and we're going to hear from some people who are there. We're going to start right now with a video from the mayor. This is from the mayor of East Palestine at their town hall. And I think this really captures the tone of what's going on. So we're going to start going right to that. And we got a lot to unpack for you today.
Yep.
This format was for safety. Everybody had safety concerns. The people want answers. I want answers. We're going to put everybody up here. No, Norfolk Southern didn't show up. They didn't feel it was safe. I've been outside all night. There's a long line. This isn't the way this is supposed to go. We're going to have everybody go up in the stands. They can ask questions. We just hope everybody stays civil. If not, they'll end it. But
how did you want it to go?
I wanted to be in the auditorium, in front of the stage, representing the citizens. Peacefully. They've said I've kept my mouth shut. I was here for the first 5 days, but the last 5 days I haven't been here. The reason I haven't been here is I've been working behind the scenes trying to get higher elected officials in here to help us out. I'm a mayor of a town of 4,700 people. If you think I can fight against a railroad, or fight against the EPA, or fight against anything like that, you're crazy.
What's your reaction to them saying they don't feel safe coming here tonight?
I don't feel safe in my town. I tell everybody they're safe. I think our citizens are safe. I think my drinking water's safe.
How are you going to get them to talk to you if they're sitting at those tables?
The tables we just did because we can't, we're trying to get information out to our citizens. Everybody's concerned. I'm concerned. But, it's not Norfolk Southern here. It's the EPA, the people that have been working with us, trying to get our citizens back into their homes safe. That's what we need right now. We need our citizens to feel safe in their own homes.
You sound frustrated.
What?
You sound frustrated.
I'm very frustrated. You guys are doing the best you can. I understand you have to get views, so sometimes you put stuff out. I had a talk with Mr. Boney. His station decided to say that we nuked our town. We didn't nuke our town. There was two options. We either detonate those tanks or they detonate themselves. This option, yes, harmful chemicals went in the air. I'm truly sorry, but that is the only option we had. If we didn't do that, then they were going to blow up and we were going to throw shrapnel all across this town.
So what is your greatest concern at this point?
My greatest concern is that my citizens feel safe. That's what I care about. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about giving reports on TV. I want you all safe. I want my citizens. I want this. I don't want 50 cameras around me. I want to be watching a basketball game here, watching my kids play in this gym. People keep forgetting. I'm a local politician. I live in this town. I don't live somewhere else making decisions for Columbus or Washington, D.C. I live in East Palestine. I live 2 blocks from here. I live 2 blocks from the train tracks. I'm concerned just like everybody else.
The reality...
Have you spoke with Norfolk Southern?
I speak with them every day. I spoke with Alan Shaw today. They have been working with us tremendously. But they should, because they're the ones that screwed this up.
How long do you think by turning it to this format now, I mean, this could go on for 24 hours.
Then that's what had happened.
What are you going to do right now in terms of controlling this new format?
I'm going to hope that I gave the people what they wanted, so I hope everybody doesn't stand up and get a stump speech. I have all the experts behind me at these tables, and by God, we're going to get some answers for these people.
Why is somebody not here?
Because they're scared for their safety.
The reality is your town is under a microscope. The EPA administrator is coming tomorrow.
Yes.
What is your message for him? What do you need?
I need help. I'm not ready for this. I wasn't built for this. I always thought of myself as a leader of men, and I have the village on my back, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right.
You know that
I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. This is my town. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to move my kids out of the school. I'm here to stay. and they're going to make it right. And that's it. That's it. I'm done playing games. They're not playing games either. I'm not. It's not he said, she said. They screwed up our town. They're going to fix it. If they don't, I'll be the first one calling all you back to do this all over again.
What is it, Mayor? You're in the middle of a growing
folks who live here need to hear to feel safe.
This is. Go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the mayor at the town hall last night. So Norfolk Southern decided not to show up. They said that they were worried about the well-being of their employees, which I think is kind of a cop-out. Also, Pete Buttigieg didn't show up. I think he should have been there. He's the Secretary of Transportation. He wasn't there. So what we ended up seeing is a lot of rightfully angry residents and nobody to, vent their anger on.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a failure on so many levels. I mean, keep in mind, like the EPA has been gutted so much over the years. So that's a factor here. Norfolk Southern has, they're really, the mayor's being diplomatic, and I get why he would do that, but really they are failing big time here, and it's absolutely criminal that they weren't present for this. I mean, this is one of those situations, and you just see this mayor of a town just so desperate for answers. And there have been other quotes from him where it's like, what do we do? We're desperate for answers. And this failure at a federal level is so,
tremendous. And it's been
sadly
brought to
not
us
surprising, but nonetheless disturbing.
Yeah. And both parties have had a hand in this. What
Big
kills
time.
me is you see online on Twitter, for example, you see people in the Republican Party blaming the Democrats. You see the Democrats blaming the Republicans, when really at the end of the day, they've both had a say in this, right?
This was a bipartisan effort. I mean, Trump gutted the EPA. Trump, eased some restrictions. Biden kept that train a-rolling, no pun intended. Biden stopped the rail strike. So
stopped the rail strike.
This was a bipartisan effort, and
I agree.
So absolutely gross. And, I think we should also mention there was another derailment in Detroit.
That's right.
So
we have video of that. Do we want to play that now?
You know how in It's a Wonderful Life, it's like every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Here in the oligarchy of the United States, every time we randomly shoot something out of the sky, a train derails. USA, baby. It's great. It's wonderful. I mean, it's just. So, Detroit's happening right now. One thing we'll mention as we continue here, Status Lou is going to be on the beat in New Palestine.
That's right.
Ohio.
He'll be there on the ground.
He's going to be there starting this weekend, and maybe he'll be going out to Detroit too. I mean, again, guys, this is breaking, so we're rolling with this the absolute best we can. We have a fraction of the resources of the corporate media, yet we're doing more than they do. So we're doing our absolute best. And so Status Lou is going to be on the beat in New Palestine, potentially Detroit as well. We'll see what happens. And let's go to the EPA's side of this too.
Okay.
Because I think we showed you what's really going on. I mean, that was an honest testimonial from the mayor, who is just completely in over his head, and reasonably so. Anybody would be in that situation.
Right.
And they're really not getting the support they need. And I think that really captures it. So here's what the EPA has to say about all this. And by the way, they were keeping people out of, a conference that they had. So let's go to that.
We are absolutely going to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, and I can promise you that. From the very beginning, EPA personnel have been on site, supporting local and state partners as they've led emergency response efforts. We've had boots on the ground, leading robust air quality testing, including the Advanced Technological Aspect Plane and a mobile analytical laboratory in and around East Palestine. Since the fire went out, EPA air monitoring has not detected any levels of health concern in the community that are attributed to the train derailment. EPA has assisted with the screening of more than 480 homes under the voluntary screening program offered to residents, and no detections of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride were identified. And we're continuing to make those screenings available to any resident that wants to have their indoor air tested. We're also continuing to conduct 24/7 air monitoring to ensure the health and safety of all residents. As it relates to water, EPA is supporting Ohio and the local government in determining what impacts the spill has had on surface and groundwater, and ensuring that the derailment has not had an effect on drinking water supply.
Meanwhile, the fish are dying, pets are getting sick, and people are getting sick. We're going to be speaking with someone who was a guest on this show who just got back from her doctor, and we got some breaking news for that. But yeah, there has been chemical damage to human beings in this. So what that man is saying is not accurate at all, what he just said.
No, it's not accurate. In fact, so let's read what she said about her doctor. If you want to put that up on the screen, Colin. So this is what she told Status Coup as her update. She lives 50 miles away in Poland, Ohio, and had a burnt tongue, throat, numb lips, and gastrointestinal bleeding. So she went to the doctor, and the doctor said this. And she said this about the doctor. My doctor said I have signs of chemical exposure in my mouth, throat, ears, and nose. He declined blood work as they do not have tests to identify chemicals in the bloodstream. He advised me to come in monthly for a chest x-ray to be proactive should anything begin to form. Other than that, he said there is little information coming out from the authorities that the medical people aren't sure how to proceed. I have faith in him, and he said he would let me know if any of his other patients begin to develop additional symptoms. He said there have been a ton of people from our area coming into his office with the same symptoms I have had, which is no surprise. This is a carcinogenic that they intentionally spewed into the air. I mean, let's remember that. This was intentionally done, right? This was the cheapest way for, because it was the cheapest way for Norfolk Southern to handle it. So they have massive liability here, in my opinion. I think the government has been at fault. We talked earlier about how Trump had rolled back, parts of the regulations, but let's go back even and further. When Obama was originally putting these regulations in place, he was lobbied by the rail industry to only have the crude oil included in his legislation. So as far as I'm concerned, that's an initial failure as well.
Well, and the big thing too is that they're saying these things like, oh, it's not a big deal for humans. We're going to call off the evacuation. Meanwhile, no, this is really serious. And by the way, the plumes floating around. And so like a ton of areas are in danger. And nobody is talking about this. Nobody is treating it with the severity that it really is. I mean, I have family in Pittsburgh, and I brought it up to them, and I'm like, guys, you got to be careful. Be careful when you go outside. And they were like, oh, that's a long way away from us. I'm like, not really. Like, no, like it's
it can
more
travel.
severe
travel.
Then they're making it out. I mean, they're just not accurately portraying what's going on. And it's like you talk to these residents and you find out like, no, this is very serious. They are really downplaying this.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to take a look, Ron, a little bit about this PSR model that's getting some attention now. I know More Perfect Union, who continues to do fantastic work, they had a little video that they put up on Twitter. So let's play that. And then I want to look at the hedge fund model that became the basis for this, because it has everything to do with why we're here today.
Let's talk about the flaming axle that appears to have derailed the Norfolk Southern train in East Palestine, Ohio. Doorbell video shows the axle overheating and failing about 20 miles before the train derailed. But initial reports say the crew was only notified about a mechanical issue shortly before the derailment. So why did that alert take so long to reach the crew if the axle was overheating for 20 miles? We're going to follow the NTSB investigation as it unfolds. Their main job is to answer why this happened, and their first update on this was issued last night. No surprise, they suspect the overheated axle to be at fault. Rail workers have suggested that precision-scheduled railroading has a lot to do with all of this. PSR is the corporate practice that's been piling up profits for the railroads lately. In short, it means cutting costs and doing more work with less people and safety resources. And it governs every system in the rail industry, including those designed to catch problems. So let's hear more from a union leader and 22-year railroad veteran.
The defect detectors have changed. They created several years back what's called a trending defect detector. Let's say defect detector number 1, this car passes, it sees it heating up, it sends a signal to the dispatch center, and it talks to the next detector. The train passes the second detector. It sees the heat increasing. There's another alarm sent. The train crew's not hearing any of this, though. It's kind of like an algorithm, so to speak. They're watching the car. What should be happening is the dispatch center notifying the crew to keep check on this car. But that ain't the times we live in. because it's hurry up, get the train across the railroad, let's make the fat cats on Wall Street happy, turn a profit. And now, if that crew hits the third defect detector, that car could be way too hot and be in a catastrophic situation as this one was. Then the crew gets an alarm, and sometimes it's too late.
So when something starts going wrong, the train crew doesn't always hear about it. Dispatch does, and they tell the crew when to check it out. But PSR has put major strain on that critical system that's supposed to keep all of us safe from a disaster like this.
Everybody on the railroad, every craft took an extreme hit with PSR. It consolidated all these dispatchers' territories to one desk, where you might have had 4 or 5 dispatchers. Now you got one guy doing the work of 5 people. The train dispatcher might have went from covering about 200 something miles of territory upwards to 1,000. They have all these trains on the screen they're taking care of. They could have heard this silent alarm that we don't hear on the train, and they're so busy they couldn't get to that.
Clyde is talking about an example of what the current conditions are like. We'll get answers as the NTSB investigation unfolds, but rail workers have warned us about the dangers of PSR and extreme profiteering long before this disaster happened.
So it's a good thing that instead of staffing better and having better staffed trains instead of grossly understaffed trains and overworking these people, it's a good thing they did all these stock buybacks instead.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's a good thing they did all that instead of. So, yeah, I mean, greed is the big component here. And again, that's something that was addressed in the rail strike. They weren't just striking, for better pay. They were mainly striking because of working conditions. And what were some of those working conditions? Well, we showed you here on the show. Being on call 80 plus hours a week.
Right.
What kind of quality of life is that?
One person on a train alone.
One person on a train alone. And it's not just one person on a train, which, by the way, I mean, you could be caffeinated to the frickin' gills and be like in the top shape of your life and have just taken a hit of ginseng. That's still way too much for one frickin' person.
Right.
Let
no,
alone
it absolutely
a person
is. It's
who
dangerous.
is grossly overworked and they're exhausted.
Right. Right.
Like, oh my God.
I think it's interesting how he's talking about how they used to have more than one person doing these monitoring sessions, right? And now they've kind of consolidated them now. And so he might not even notice that this alarm is going off on these clearly old axles, by the way. That's another thing to bring up. And the reason we got to this point is because of this hedge fund model that has been instituted across all of these train companies, right? So it's not just one. One adopted it, and now they've all adopted it because they're able to extract more wealth. So I wanted to put up this article from Common Dreams that sort of does a deep dive into this PSR model. Say that 10 times fast, and look at that. So do not let this thing be normalized, said one railroad worker. It's time to take back our rail system from greedy profiteers who externalize risks and reap profits at our expense. An inter-union alliance of rail workers argued Tuesday that the massive freight train crash in East Palestine, Ohio, late last week was a predictable consequence of Wall Street-backed policy decisions that have hollowed out the industry's workforce, pushed remaining employees to chronic exhaustion, and sacrificed safety for profits. In an assessment of the Norfolk Southern train derailment based on currently available information, Railroad Workers United wrote that the root causes of this wreck are the same ones that have been singled out repeatedly, associated with the hedge fund initiated operating model known as precision schedule railroading, or PSR. The group noted that the immediate cause of the wreck appears to have been a 19th century style mechanical failure of the axle on one of the cars, an overheated bearing, leading to derailment, then hijacking tumbling cars. And we did talk about last week about that Lever News article where they didn't want to update these axles and these brakes, right? That was part of the legislator that they lobbied to have not passed. So I think that that's part of the story too. So there is in no way in the 21st century, save from a combination of incompetence and disregard to public safety, that such a defect should still be threatening our communities, wrote RWU, which supports nationalization of the U.S. rail system. 40% of the weight of an NS-32N was grouped at the rear third of the train, which has always been a bad practice and made more dangerous with longer, heavier trains. The statement continued. The fact almost certainly made the wreck dynamically worse, but increasingly the PSR-driven carriers, driven to cut costs and crew time by any means necessary, cut corners and leave crews and the public at risk. Yeah, these are just a natural outcome, and they don't have any regard at all to, the safety of their workers, let alone the folks that might be at risk that live by railroads. It's crazy that this is happening, and I think it didn't get a lot of attention until this year. It started getting attention because of the rail worker strike, but nothing changed.
Nothing happened, so
nothing changed.
Had the strike went through, that there's a chance that all of this could have been prevented.
I agree.
Because all of these things are preventable on multiple levels, and what's the culprit they all have in common? Well, it's just
greed.
They want to just
greed.
Greed, corporate greed. It is unreal that it got to this point, and that wow, this is just something. So we have a guest who is here now. We're going to go ahead and bring them in.
All right.
So hi. How are you? This is Zuzu. Did I mispronounce your name?
Is Zuzu, right? Zuzu?
Yeah, you've got it.
Zuzu.
Welcome. So you are a resident of East Palestine, correct?
Right.
So walk us through what you've been experiencing the last couple of days.
Oh, wow. It's been really overwhelming and surreal and shocking and horrifying and just dehumanizing. Really, a lot of big feelings, a lot of like disbelief, really. It's scary. It's very scary. We don't know what's safe, where is safe, what to do, anything.
And my understanding,
refresh everybody's memory who may not be familiar. What is the situation with your 9-year-old son?
Right.
So he's immune compromised. He has pretty bad asthma. That's what hospitalized him before. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. He has allergies as well. And the doctors recently, over the past few months, he's been in and out of hospitals. He had COVID, then he had some other infections that he was not himself. He was this little boy who loved playing outside, running outside, playing in the creeks, playing sports. And he was just so sick from all these things. So we were really afraid whenever this train derailment happened. That night, we were right at the mile marker from it, and we were closer to the school that was an evacuation zone. So we decided to stay sheltered in place like the rest of the town. About 5 hours in, I started smelling it in the house. I started getting sick, and then literally not even 5 or 10 minutes later, my son, I heard him. It sounded like a cough, and I thought it was a cat at first, and then I realized it was my son puking. And I ran to his room, and he was not sick at all before this event. And I ran into his room, and he was just like projectile vomiting. And when I walked in the room, I like hesitated for a minute because it was like you could tell maybe it was more drafty in there, but you could tell there was like a big cloud of some kind of chemical smell more than the rest of the house. And he was projectile vomiting, and he was shaking, and he said he couldn't breathe. He was begging for water, and I didn't know if he was going to stop breathing. I didn't know what was going to happen at that point. And like, I didn't even clean up the throw up. I ran out of there with him. I already had a little bag packed because at that point I was concerned because this fire had gotten so big. And at that time, we didn't even know what was burning on the train. We had no idea. It took over a day for Norfolk to even admit that there was chemicals on the train. And then even after the evacuation order was lifted, they said, oh yeah, by the way, there was 3 other hazardous, like highly carcinogenic chemicals on this train, which was terrifying. I mean, all of this has just been really horrific. But yeah, so my son and I, we ran out of there. My partner was with us. We didn't even get to bring our kittens at that point because it was just, I didn't know what to expect with my son's health. It was just really scary. And I just knew we had to leave. I said, we have to go right now. But
how's your son doing? Is he doing a little bit better or?
Yeah. He's, so he threw up one more time about an hour after we left in a hotel that we had evacuated to about 20 miles away.
Okay.
And then after that, he was okay. He has been absolutely fine since. He did have about 2 days after that, he developed these rashes on his arms. They were just splotchy, looked like eczema. But it's very similar to the rest of the kids in town right now and a lot of adults as well. But those went away too, and he's been fine. But we haven't been back. He has not been back at all. Today was the first time I actually returned home for an air quality test. And I actually couldn't be in the house for more than a few minutes before I started feeling sick again.
Are
I have a
the
lot of
kittens
those.
okay?
Yeah, so about a day later, we were able to go back. My partner went back and got the kittens out of there before they started really like cracking down on road closures and stuff for the people like right at that mile marker. Things were changing by the hour. Just state police and undercover police and emergency vehicles. 50 different fire departments showed up. Like, it was just so chaotic, but we were able to slip in between some of those barriers before they really started like really cutting off stuff even on our like local highway into PA. And we got our kittens out of there.
Yeah,
So.
I think I heard one of them meow. Actually,
Yeah.
they were answering my question. They were like, "We're okay." Well,
Yeah.
we're certainly glad your household is all okay. Although it's so terrible what you're going through. This is absolutely terrible.
It's inexcusable. It's just absolutely inexcusable.
So speak a little bit to your experience when you tried to attend the EPA.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
So the one today?
Yeah.
I was surprised that it wasn't open for residents. I thought that was odd because it didn't. I only had heard about it maybe a couple hours ahead of when it was actually happening, and we were actually already at the park meeting with some reporters and some other local people in the gazebo across the side of the park. So we walked over there, and they were denying us to go in the building and listen and ask questions. Especially, it was concerning for me because last night was our town hall meeting, which ended up having probably like at least hundreds of people, maybe if not thousands of people, a lot of media. The crowd was angry. The residents were angry. That was very evident. And I'm wondering if they wanted to do just a press, like media only today, so our voices couldn't be heard. That they could just kind of write the narrative that they wanted the press to show to the rest of the world.
I think so. So did you hear any of the video of the EPA guy speaking? Because I would like to know how that makes you feel. Do you feel like he's lying to you? Does it make you angry?
I haven't heard too many things. I really haven't had a chance to catch up on it entirely. I did see some of the things that they said they were going to crack down on federal protocols for the trains going through because, I mean, they've literally lobbied against some of these safety features that would have prevented this disaster.
Yeah.
I would
lobbied
like to,
successfully against. I mean, both parties have been part and parcel to listening to these lobbyists and preventing any of these safety regulations from being passed, but also the train company. I mean, one of the things that the workers were saying that we shouldn't be running trains that are 150 car lengths long. One of the employees said, this is one of the train workers, there should be some limitations to the weight and the length of the trains. In this case, had the train not been 18,000 tons, it's very likely the effects of the derailment would not have been, the effects of the derailment would have been mitigated. So this worker is basically saying that they're adding way too many cars and way too much weight to an axle that's already compromised. And that could have been avoided that way as well. So there's just, again, it's motivated by greed.
Mm-hmm.
Before we let you go, could you speak a little bit about the town hall last night and your experience there as well?
I felt very angry after I left. I felt like that was kind of what I was expecting them to do. They just gave us a lot of runaround, vague answers that kind of dodged our questions, and they just used as many words as they could. Like, they weren't really saying anything while they were saying it, and there was a lot of long-winded I don't knows. There was a lot of I actually stayed over at the end of it for about an hour trying to talk to as many EPA, whoever I could before they moved their stuff out. And I was asking questions to Ohio EPA, and he directed me to the US EPA. I went to him. He said, oh, the Ohio EPA guy is who you want to talk to. And neither one of them had the answer. Nobody could answer the real actual questions. A lot of residents had a pretty strong voice. There are women. There's a woman who lives real close to me. Her house was condemned. They said that her air tested okay first, and then they went back. She demanded more testing because she's by the contaminated creek, just like I am. And they condemned her house. They're paying for her to move out, all her moving costs. And they're still telling people at this town hall meeting that they're not finding levels in people's home. And that's just not true. And she's not the only one either.
Well, how can they how can they say that when it's like the way you're describing it, it's like most people are showing these various symptoms, be it like a sore throat or a headache, and you're talking about these rashes that a lot of people have, especially children.
We're really concerned. It's scary. Yeah, so
scary.
We're asking that. We're asking, why are we getting sick? And we couldn't get an answer.
So one of the things the EPA is saying is that the homes that they are testing, that the air contamination is fine. They've actually said this about several of the homes, which I doubt is the case. So
the readings they're showing us that they are, but our houses smell like formaldehyde. They smell like overwhelming chemical smell. People are still getting sick. It doesn't add up. Like either the numbers you're getting need to be lowered or you're lying.
Right.
Like people are sick. Answer why. We didn't all just develop the same problems just coincidentally when CDC data shows these are the symptoms from this exposure. It's bullshit. They're lying to our faces.
Well, the other part too is the long-term effects of these chemicals. Even in right now, we're discussing like the short-term things, like the rashes, the vomiting, headaches, these types of things. Long-term effects could lead to cancer if you're exposed to this, in perpetuity. So there's that concern as well. The EPA hasn't really said anything about that.
Yeah. So I do know. At least some of these, especially the vinyl chloride, but the other ones are just honestly as bad. 40 years. It can take 40 years to show up in a person. And then these other ones, if you look on the CDC website, they have an agency for toxic substances and disease registry that shows the exact levels. But I mean, they don't have much data from this exposure other than like PVC warehouses that people work with this stuff or the world wars. The world wars. It's crazy.
It's very scary. No, it's very scary. So my other question is, what are they taking care of your hotel bills? Is somebody stepping up at least to provide some sort of relief? Is FEMA coming in and taking care of families? Like, how is all of the logistics being played out here?
No. So Norfolk Southern had hired a claims department. That they had an assistance center set up. They were reimbursing people for spending their own money, reimbursing with receipts only for a mile radius. And then once they tested with the air quality team that they hired, once they tested our air as okay, they were no longer reimbursing anybody. They were offering inconvenience checks, but yeah, it's really we're on our own here now. Yeah, we're just running out of time, running out of money. We're told that FEMA wouldn't accept this as a normal disaster, a regular disaster. They gave some
because it's not a natural. Okay, it's
because this does not happen. The last one, one of the last ones that happened was 1/10 of this size in Paulsboro, New Jersey, in 2012, and they try to cover it up the same way. People are still getting sick there. This is, I mean, the railways are just not being regulated. They're lobbying against putting hazardous labels on these trains. This train was not marked hazardous. Why? We need answers. We need reasons why they're not being held accountable.
I agree. So you're not getting help from Norfolk Southern. You're not getting help from the government. I'd say both of them are responsible for this disaster and need to step up to the plate and pony out some funds.
Right. Biden just shut down the railroad strike. A lot of these workers were warning against something exactly like this happening.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He should not have done that. Again, that was in the name of commerce, right? We can't have the railroad workers on strike because that will shut down the economy. All of these decisions are ultimately motivated by profiteering. They're ultimately motivated by, capitalists and corporate America having it their way all the time to an excessive amount where it's just not tenable at this point. And I worry, we have another derailment that just happened in Detroit 2 hours ago, right? So this is also a Norfolk Southern train. So obviously there's clearly a pattern here. There's a problem.
Yes.
So thank you so much for giving us an update here. And we wish you guys to stay safe. I mean, it's so terrible what you're going through. People want to know, though, is there anything out there? Is there like a GoFundMe or,
I was just
is there any
donations.
way that citizens can help at this point in time? Or is anything in development that you know of?
Yeah.
So the only thing I know of, and I've been getting that question a lot, so maybe I might have to set something up myself. I know there are a lot of us that are still in hotels because even though they say our air is safe, we're getting sick and we smell it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go back. I don't blame you.
No, I know there is a GoFundMe set up, but I've also been warned that they can withhold funds sometimes. So I don't know if I don't know much about that myself, but maybe I need to step up and take care of that because I haven't heard of anything else. Maybe somebody else in town has, but not me.
Okay. Well, if anything changes, if anything changes in that department, please feel free to send it our way, and
we'll share it.
We'll definitely keep in contact with you here, and thank you so much for sharing this information with us.
Yeah, so most of the information that's being shared around with local residents what's really happening is on our East Palestine Facebook groups. Really, there's people from out of state coming in and saying this is the only place we're really getting at the true what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So I will keep you guys updated.
I believe it. All right.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Best to the kid and the kittens.
Thank you so much.
All right. Be well. Oh, wow. So, folks, and of course, when we find out more about any potential GoFundMe's or anything like that, we, of course, will share that. And in the meantime, do check out that Facebook group. I think that was kind of where Status Coup started.
Had found some
we
folks,
kind of
yeah.
found a lot of folks that way, too. I know Jordan did. I know that they were going to go out there even earlier, but it was just not quite safe yet.
Yeah.
But Status Lou is on his way.
Yeah, we don't want Lou to get sick. So Lou is going to be on the ground there starting this weekend. So please, if you're not a member already, consider becoming a member of Status Coup. It is your membership dues that fund our on-the-ground reporting, which can get pricey. All of our equipment, hotel rooms, airfare, it adds up. But it's important stuff, and we want to keep doing the work that we're doing. So please consider becoming a member, and make sure you tune in all weekend to see Status Lou's reporting down in East Palestine on the ground there.
Yeah, I mean, with the way things are going right now, we might need to invest in oxygen tanks too.
I know.
So, like it's not easy to do journalism, folks. So if you can, please do become a member, because again, I mean, this is just a colossal failure of
it's
federal
a colossal
government.
Failure, and it's not the first time it's happened, and I just don't. How many times do we have to repeat this with corporations getting their way with deregulation, with regulatory capture, where they have their ex-employees go into government organizations that are supposed to be the watchdogs, no longer being the watchdogs because they're going to go back to the corporations when they're done with their government stint. And it's the people in this country that continue to suffer. It just keeps ratcheting up and getting worse.
I mean, my honest answer to your question,
I know what
general strike. I mean, general strike. Like until there is a general strike, this will not stop. Like a straight up shut it down until the status quo changes, and we can't just, I mean, it just, I don't call for a general strike because I think it'll be easy. It's not going to be easy. I call for a general strike because I don't see any other option.
Right.
I see no other option. If someone has another option, please let me know. I'd be curious to hear it. And I've gotten all kinds of interesting responses to that when I've posed that question in the past. There have been people who think that if I just start an email list, that will somehow solve all of our woes. So that's a hell of an imagination. But, I think in realitysville, it's going to take a general strike, and I don't see any other way. I really don't. And also, as we're talking to some of these folks, and we have some more guests here coming up at around 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific.
In about 10 minutes.
Another thing to keep in mind is that some of the interviews Jordan conducted, some of these interviewees also spoke to corporate outlets, and they spoke to the corporate outlets for a while, and the corporate outlets seem to have conveniently omitted when they talked about their symptoms.
Their health
so
symptoms.
People are getting sick, and they know it. The stuff that we just heard of people having symptoms, people having rashes, that is common. It's not safe to be there. They should not have called off that evacuation order. But now we're realizing why they did it. At first, I thought, well, why would they call off an evacuation order? We found out why, because like our guest told us, they stopped reimbursing people when the air was declared safe. So the evacuation order was called off to save them even more money.
I think we're looking down the barrel of a massive class action lawsuit, and I'm here for that. And you're right. So
I really want to share your optimism there. I know. So.
I knew you were going to say
freaking hope so, and I hope I hope this company goes out of business. I hope Suffolk Northern. What's it called?
Norfolk Southern.
There's no way anyone can say that 5 times fast. That's why they named it that. No. They named it that. They're like, people screw this up. Norfolk Southern, which is weird because like Norfolk is kind of the South, depending on who you ask. They're messing with us, but
they're messing with us. So like you said, a lot of the folks that Jordan interviewed did longer format interviews with major news outlets, but they were cut down into little sound bites, and their symptoms were kind of not just mentioned at all in the sound bites. So in lieu of that, Colin put together a little mismatch of some of the East Palestine interviews we've done over the last few days. Let's go ahead and play that clip, Colin.
In your experience, does the actual areas these are happening and the makeup of the residents and frankly poverty play a part in the sweeping it under the rug?
Well, They actually do, because I don't know if there's a perception or idea by those leaders or those agencies that they're just not going to figure it out. They're just going to run the clock on them, which I think is a huge mistake, because they are figuring it out. They will figure it out. They do count. They do matter. They do have a voice, and they're learning how to really start using it. And bravo for that. But oftentimes they are dismissed because they think they're not going to find out, or they're not going to understand what it means. I mean, it's an entire learning curve, and I've seen plenty of communities willing to go and do that. And they have a great sense of common sense, and they know something's wrong, but they get pushed back on or suppressed or repressed because they're told, oh, you shouldn't ask any questions. And if you do ask any questions, they're not smart questions and you don't know anything. I mean, I've been here, done that.
It was really bad. Like, there was smoke everywhere, and it was not good for anybody in the area. And then the controlled explosion that didn't seem very controlled to me just made it a lot worse for everybody. The toxic gases and everything, it was a mess for everybody.
And could you talk about, because you've basically been taking your animals to the vet back and forth. I want to show an image you posted of one that looks pretty ill. That's one of your foxes there. Swollen face, runny eyes, coughing. Another one, unfortunately, passed away. This is Kieran.
So far at the vet, they've tested the blood levels, and there's raised liver enzymes. All of that is in line with vinyl chloride exposure.
Once they announced that, we thought that was atrocious from the beginning. The way they wanted to do it. At first, the evacuation zone was a mile, and then once they decided to do the controlled burn, they made it 2 miles. And we just thought that was ridiculous. We saw that they evacuated that area. It is a poor area, impoverished area. Columbiana County itself is impoverished anyway, but that area where that train derailed at is very impoverished, and they were kicking people out of their homes. I mean, there's no other word to say that. Like, that evacuation, you leave right now, you got to go. Not Norfolk Southern wasn't there, but, you know, the sheriffs and the state police were there escorting people out of their house. You have to leave right now. And so we were right on it then. We noticed that people were being shipped to hotels as far as Newell, West Virginia, which is about 35, 40 minutes away from East Palestine. They weren't allowed back in their houses. They weren't sure how they were going to pay for this hotel. Then the railroad decided that they were going to reimburse daily, which we thought was atrocious again. You're making people go from 30, 40 minutes away, drive back to East Palestine to the community center, and then getting a daily check to go back to the hotel and then redo again, right? And so why that was ridiculous is because once you have people who are living paycheck to paycheck, sometimes paycheck to other paychecks, we've all been there, having to pay for a hotel first and then go back to get money to reimburse, that could be a danger to them right away.
It was.
It was food in people's mouths. Hotels were complaining. They were dropping people at sometimes, and then people would have to get back in the hotel. So
I'm sorry if I'm screaming. I'm so frustrated. I just dawned on me. I'm kind of screaming at you, and I don't mean to be.
I'm honored to be screamed at by Aaron Brockovich.
For this community. This has been 30 years, and it's the same story, Jordan, over and over and over again. I don't know if they're expecting a different reaction or response, but it's complete and utter, a little too late, lack of transparency, failure on how to appropriately respond to a national disaster. I mean, this is a great conversation for us to have. This always feels like a huge gaslight. I don't know any word to use on these communities. Oh, that's right. What you're seeing, this takes me back to my days in Hinckley, California. Oh, Aaron, the two-headed frog in green water that you see, is it real? And then it makes us question ourselves, and it's like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, no, what I am seeing is real. And I'm going to validate and stand with every community that is the persons in the disaster that is experiencing it, believe me, they're not lying. And for whatever reason, I don't know why these agencies don't want to hear from we the people as to what's happening to them, to us, in a situation like this on the ground. They're there. These agencies in DC, and not everyone's stepping out there to find out for themselves.
These chemicals that
I agree with you, Aaron, and thank you, Aaron, for the work you do. Let's hear it for Erin Brockovich, man. She's been on the front line of environmental activism for decades now. Of course, I think back because of my age. I think back to the movie that was played by, what's her name? Julia Roberts.
Oh, okay. Right on.
I'm dating myself.
So we got some more guests coming up here, folks.
We do.
We'll take a brief intermission of the New Palestine stuff here to do a little bit of announcements here and to go through some super chats. But we got some more guests coming. They should be here right around 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. But first of all, special shout out to everyone who was with me for the net neutrality live stream. That was a frustratingly fun time because the hearing was very frustrating. Please check out that video if you haven't yet. We go through the entire hearing, and just to let you know, somebody actually timestamped my summary of the whole thing. So if you're thinking this might be a little hard to listen to Ted Cruz for a while, I get it. I don't take credit for that. Somebody was nice enough to timestamp the summary so you can skip right to the summary. It won't hurt my feelings. And of course, go to battleforthenet.com, sign that petition, demand they confirm Gigi Sohn, and check out that video. I got some tour dates coming up, folks. Go to ronplacone.com. April 14th, I will be in Los Angeles, California. May 12th, Los Angeles, California. June 16th, Madison, Wisconsin. June 17th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. June 29th, Chicago, Illinois. And for those Midwest shows, use the promo code Lucy at checkout because I got an early bird special going there. So Midwest shows, Lucy at checkout, and you get a discount on tickets. I think we could all use a laugh, so I can't wait to see you all. And keep in mind, if you are on strike or part of a union labor effort, you get to come to my show for free. Email me. We'll work it out. And let's do some chats before our guests get here.
Yeah. We also have 2 new members that just joined. I wanted to give a shout out to them. So Mary Rose and Cameron, welcome. We're so glad that you joined us here at Status Coup. We appreciate your membership funds. They are what help us fund our on-the-ground reporting. So we do appreciate that, and welcome.
Oh, I said I also welcome. Yeah, all right. Jordan just texted me. Okay, so at one point I had a brain fart and I said New Palestine. So apologies for that. Yeah, sorry, y'all. I think you know what I've had.
Dude, it's fine. Sometimes I think governor and I say Secretary of State. It's all good.
Oh, I do stuff like that. I mean, yeah.
Like,
we all flub our words, but I couldn't even tell you when I did that or how many times I did it. But yeah, sorry about that.
New Palestine.
East Palestine, and welcome
Very
to
biblical.
Our members. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, y'all. Tony D, what's up, buddy? Speaking of Chicago, I hope to see you there. Do you know why the train was carrying toxic chemicals in the first place? I think
that's a good question. Do you know,
I'm
Ron?
not positive, but
I'm not
I think it might have been for some fracking efforts. I'm not positive on that, but I think it might have been for that.
Wouldn't that be so on brand?
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, maybe that's why. Like maybe that's just like people kind of like hypothesize that, but yeah, I'm not sure. Just to be clear, but that is a valid question. Eleanor, what's up? How are you, Eleanor? Mainstream media can't and won't hold the powerful accountable. That's who they report to. Support Status Coup and real journalism. Thank you so much for that, Eleanor. And yes, please, if you are able, please do consider becoming a member. StatusCoup.com/join. It is so important that we tell these stories because nobody else is. And they're not only are they not telling the stories, but they're omitting parts of the story. So please, if you can, StatusCoup.com/join. Junior. You do Junior both ways. I love it. The human impact of this catastrophe will be felt for generations. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, there's a real cancer potential here. These folks need help. I don't know how safe it is for them to go back even in 2 months from now.
Yeah. Melissa, what's up? I hope all is well at Recycled Reading up in Vermont. Cy, I remember when the EPA was very independent of politics. Yeah. I actually don't
Those
remember.
days are gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't
Those
remember
days
when
are
those
gone.
days were, but I think they're long.
And it's not just
gone.
the EPA, it's the SEC. It's like almost every regulatory body that we have that is supposed to be the ultimate safeguard for consumer protections, for safety, all of these things. They've all been possessed and taken over by corporate people that work for the corporations. And it's a revolving door, right? So they work at the corporation, then they go into the regulatory body, which they have no teeth for, obviously. And then they go back to the corporation and make a shit ton of money. I mean, it's really tremendously terrible. It's very bad for our democracy. It's been going on for the last 3 decades at least. And it's both parties. My thing at this point is I kind of roll my eyes because I see on Twitter, I see people, the Republicans are saying, "Where's Pete?" I'm like, "Good question. Where's Pete?"
Good question.
But then they'll turn around and be like, "No, my guy Trump's not responsible." No, your guy Trump is also very much responsible. And then the Democrats will say, "Yeah, like it's all on Trump. Why is it Pete's problem? What is he supposed to do?" I don't know. Maybe
did you
because
see that Brian Krasenstein tweet?
No, I didn't. But
see?
point being is, of course, he should be here. This
Yeah.
is his. He's the Secretary of Transportation. Yes, he should be on the ground right now in East Palestine. Also, I mean, let's be honest. Obama should not have removed that as part of the bill. Like he stripped out these chemicals from being included with the crude oil. That was the wrong move, but they did it because they got pressure from the corporations, from lobbyists. Also, why hasn't Biden rolled back these Trump measures? He could put them back in place.
Also,
he could push to have that done. And why did he step into the middle of a strike? These striking workers were correct. They knew that these safety issues were going to be a problem.
And you know who really did the most to neuter the EPA more than anybody else? Dick Cheney and the Bush administration. So yeah, I mean, there's like
you are 100% correct on that.
To say like it's one side of the Wall Street coin.
George W. Bush is the gift that just won't stop giving. I swear.
Oh, everything.
His administration has been probably the most nefarious out of all of them. I'm saying, I think Reagan's terrible. I think Clinton was terrible. I mean, they've all had terrible.
They were all terrible. But Bush was
his
just
in particular was a next level of, I agree. The lasting effects of the things that he put into place.
Yeah, and people forget about that because he has a mediocre painting career now. So people forget that it's like, he was actually even more terrible than everything.
When I see liberals Trump, doing Reagan. Bush apologia on Twitter, I just kind of like go, "Oh my God, you're kidding me, right?"
They're not. That's the scary part. They're not kidding you. They actually
they're not.
believe
it's
that.
Scary. They do.
He didn't tweet me, so they think, anyway. Tony D, what's up? This woman, I'm not sure I know what this means exactly. This woman needs
to see DR House.
You know what that is? Is that
Doctor? Wait, Doctor House? Oh, Doctor House! Dr. House, the TV show, Dr. House.
Oh, okay.
He figures out all of the crazy elements. Yes, I agree.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that TV show.
Oh, it's a great TV show. It's one of my favorites.
I'm not cool.
You're not cool.
Eliza, what resources are being provided to residents? Well, it looks like nothing.
It sounds to me from what our interviews are telling us. Yeah. If they cut off the money now that they're saying that there's, the air is fine, so we no longer have to reimburse you for your. It is evil. The air is absolutely not fine. It is clearly
and it
not
really
fine.
did. I mean, just to reiterate for anyone who missed it, I was wondering, why did they call off the evacuation? Now we know why. It's because now the company's not responsible for anything. I mean, oh my, wow.
It's always money.
Yeah.
Despo's
Fleisch, what's up? What's up, Despo's Fleisch? Hope all is well up in out in Germany. I wish the winds would carry the fumes directly to the Washington bubble. Then they might actually do something. They might actually do something about it.
Then they would have to do something about it. Right now it's in their yard. Fair. Harsh but fair.
All one same to this courageous, intelligent mom. Absolutely. And that's really it's really awesome that she's able to tell us these stories. It's terrible that it's happening. It sucks to hear it, but it's awesome that she's able to share it with us. So that is good. And fortunately, her and her household are safe right now. So that's something. John Ramsey, what's up? Thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. You help keep this show on the air. And Melissa H. up in Vermont. What is up? Great coverage. Member for 6 years. Join.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for that, Melissa. And please, if you are able, please do leave a super chat or join Status Coup, status2.com/join. And if funds are tight and you can't do any of that stuff, We get it totally. You know what
we
you
get
can't do, and what everyone needs to do right now: smash that like button. Smash it. Smash that like button. Show it who's boss. Show it who's boss.
Every
Smash
time you do that, I want to slap my computer.
Don't do that, but smash the like button. We don't need any more computer
Breakdowns.
foils for you. We don't need
true.
you'll scare Hypatia. We don't need that. But we do need a smashed like button. A gently smashed like button.
Gently smashed like button.
So
Okay, so I think we're waiting
are our
for
guests
one
ready?
more roommate. We have Leah. Oh no, they're
Oh,
both
they're there.
here. Well,
Okay.
hello.
Hi.
Hello, ladies.
How's it going?
Welcome to the show.
Hello there.
I think we should be asking you, how is it going? So you're where do you begin,
going.
right?
Yeah. Well,
So
it's
what
been
have the
fun.
last few days been like for you guys?
Scary and confusing. We live about 15 miles south of East Palestine, so we're not exactly like in the epicenter of everything, but it's been kind of like
You're in
radio
East
silence.
Liverpool?
Yes, I'm
Liverpool, right?
in
Yeah.
East Liverpool, Ohio. Yeah, so it's just a stone's throw away. We really haven't been told much of anything. It seems like I don't know, just no one has information. No one wants to come forth with information, and we're just kind of sitting here on our laurels, wondering what to do, what's safe.
Definitely.
So you can smell the chemicals in your area. I mean, 15 miles isn't that far away. I know, especially with wind, it's going to blow these chemicals around. So, I mean, the fact that the EPA and whatnot want to focus on a 1 mile radius, this is also a travesty of justice, in my opinion. That is ridiculous. You think that these chemicals are just going to like hit a 1 mile barrier and stop? That's
Exactly.
not how it works.
Exactly.
That's not
I
how it
mean,
works.
and we live downstream, and
So it blows
basic
down.
understanding in how the environment works is it's going to flow down. It's going to flow into the Ohio River, and it was confirmed that chemicals were found in the Ohio River, and we were not told what chemicals, to what amount. Is this a safe amount? It's just we're just being told, oh, it's fine, it's a safe amount according to protocol. Well, whose protocol? Give me the numbers, give me the specifics. Don't just tell me it's okay. And
yeah, we mainly just want the data. Like, instead of just everything's fine, like
tell me the truth.
And I know, like, obviously we're in a small town in Ohio, and in their minds we're too dumb to actually need the data, but some of us are a little more vocal than others too.
Exactly.
And when you just feed us nothing, people are going to start asking questions,
And
No, and you're right on that.
Go ahead,
Don't you?
sorry.
Well, you're hitting on something that I think is a really important point. They talk to a lot of these folks. They talk down to a lot of folks, right?
Very
They
much
come
so.
from
Very
a
much.
place of being condescending, which is really infuriating.
Definitely.
It is absolutely. People know that something is not right. You can't look people in the face here and tell them it's okay. It's not okay. I mean, we've lived here our entire lives, and even though I'm not from East Palestine, that's just the town up the street, and I've known that my entire life, and it's we know what's normal. This is not normal.
Exactly. And Leah drives through that town all the time to go visit like her mother, who's just north. Just north,
about
of East
8 miles
Palestine.
north, and she's almost 70. I'm worried about her health. What's going to happen to her. So many things that I don't have answers for, and I'm scared, and I want to be safe, and I want to keep others safe as well. It's just.
Have you had any symptoms? Oh, sorry, Ron.
No, I was actually going to ask that. I was gonna say, can you speak to some of the symptoms that y'all have been experiencing?
Yes. So I would say Monday, which was about a week after the controlled burn, I started getting symptoms of what I thought was a sinus infection, but who's to say, considering what has just happened, the timing, I have, my sinuses are inflamed. I have a sore throat. I have a headache. I feel sick.
And so do I, but my symptoms only showed up more recently. But she actually drove near East Palestine a few days ago, and it seemed like her symptoms appeared earlier, maybe because she was closer to where it originated from.
Yeah. So, am I sick, or is this something else? What is this? What's going on? And are other people experiencing this? They say that the air is safe, but if that's the case, why are our throats burning? Why do we have headaches? Why do we not feel well all at the same time?
Yeah.
It's a little strange.
And during the controlled burn too, we actually saw black smoke on the tree line. It was so thick that we couldn't see over the hill to our neighbor's yard.
It looked like fog, but
it wasn't fog. Yeah, it was black. And
Mhm.
it was terrifying. And we've been scared to open our windows, to go
Yeah, I
outside.
wouldn't.
We've been
Yeah.
minimizing going outside as often as we can.
I don't know if you guys were aware, but the night of the controlled burn, there was a weather. It was called I'm not sure what the terminology for it was, but the clouds were basically keeping the toxic gases trapped in the area. So instead of being able to evaporate safely into higher air, things kind of ballooned out and spread over the area. So, the 1 mile radius, I don't know where they're getting that from. It seems so absolutely ridiculous to me, considering all the factors. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they think the poisonous chemicals get tired after a month.
Right, or they just disappeared like a magic trick.
Yeah,
It's like one of those senior citizens who walks around a mall. Like after a mile, we pack it in.
We're done now.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, where is it now? Is it still here? Is it going into the air? It's raining today. Is it coming down in the rain?
Probably.
Yeah, and it's like I'm afraid to go outside and do anything.
And we have elderly neighbors too that live in the same apartment complex as we do, and every time they go out, we worry oh gosh, like one of our neighbors was out like the day after the burn, and we were very, very concerned that she would get sick.
Yeah, right. And we've been doing our due diligence and keeping up with the news, but it's not the same for everyone. No one. I don't think people in the area are aware of the severity and the potentiality of danger,
Right.
and people just aren't being informed.
They're
so
not
they don't know
exactly. That's why.
Exactly, they don't know to be worried to keep themselves safe, and it's just all I want to do is just shout from the rooftops. Don't drink the water, don't breathe the air.
Yeah.
But there's only so much I can do.
So the river that that's polluted comes by where you are. Is that correct?
Yes. So the Beaver Creek and Little Beaver Creek area, those are near East Palestine. And as far as I am aware of, as of today, there is still a rainbow film. If
you can see it on top
there's
of the water,
a video I think was released maybe an hour ago of someone tossing a large rock into the water, and you can see the chemicals.
It's terrifying.
Bubbling
it's so
up
scary.
from the bottom,
yeah.
and that creek runs into the Ohio River, which of course feeds into the Mississippi and everything else.
Right.
And you can only hope that it's diluted enough to be safe, but I don't know.
I doubt it.
When you physically see it in front of you too, that's kind of hard to ignore.
Exactly. And
this goes far beyond like one specific area. I mean, we're talking the water supply for millions and millions of people.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
It's not just us.
It's not just us.
No. East Palestine is ground zero, and then it just there's limits that come out from that. It's going to affect the butterfly effect, so to speak.
Exactly. So,
and it's just such a shame that there should be more help. Like we were watching earlier, we watched the interview with that wonderful woman who has been through so much, but the fact that she's not getting any sort of reimbursement, nobody's helping her, and her son is sick. He could die.
It's absolutely horrifying.
It's awful.
It is.
Yeah, we're lucky enough that we just have a little sniffle and a cough, but that. It's just
but you don't know what that could develop into something too.
Exactly.
The long-term effects of these chemicals are severe. I mean, they're carcinogenic. I couldn't get that out.
Exactly.
Which means we could be seeing effects from this 30 or 40 years from now, quite easily.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's no way that's staying in 1 mile.
Yeah. And also you talked about in the last year, Leah's father passed away of a rare brain cancer.
Oh, wow.
And previously he had mentioned that he had seen a pink plume coming out of
his WTI. I don't know if you guys are familiar with WTI in East Liverpool.
What's that?
Is the I believe it is the nation's largest toxic waste incinerator in East Liverpool, Ohio.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is this area of our country is basically, the world's dumping ground, and everything bad comes here. And if it spills, oh well. Too bad.
Yeah, and the residue that had come out of like one of the smokestacks like landed in the field where he was coaching soccer, wasn't he? And we're kind of putting two and two together. Like, how did he get this rare brain cancer? And
probably
that
from chemicals.
Yeah, exactly. Because he
So-
lived in the Ohio Valley his whole life.
Yeah, so this is just a song as old as time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and something needs to be done about it. So
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
assuming that there have not been any EPA officials or anybody coming down to your area. They're probably
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
Not a peep.
Nope.
So
Not a
you're
peep.
you're getting even less information than the folks are in East Palestine, which is literally next to nothing. I don't think the EPA would have been there if it hadn't been for the pressure that they're finally starting to get from the media. I mean, the first few days after this happened, very few media outlets were picking it up, which we were surprised at. We talked about it, the next day. But this is the problem in our country right now is corporate interests have their tentacles not only in our bot Congress, but also in the media, right? They've been buying up all of these, media outlets. And so now a lot of them are corporate owned. And it's really difficult for a journalist in these places to really speak frankly about corporate corruption. It just is.
Definitely. Right? Yeah. And
by
especially,
design.
Yeah, we typically also don't watch like mainstream like news anymore. I feel like I get like the most honest news from smaller like channels like you guys. Like I feel like you're more honest about like your news, and it's less like like tiptoeing around things. And you guys are very upfront and very forward.
It shouldn't be that way. The real information should be out there for everyone, and it isn't. I mean, the only reason we are on top of this is because we're just very proactive people. But I don't think majority of our town really knows what the danger is next door.
Definitely.
They really don't understand the gravity of the situation.
Definitely.
Well, right now is it? Right now, like if you could expand on that a little bit, like right now, is it just kind of business as usual for a lot of people?
Absolutely normal.
Completely
Absolutely,
normal.
completely normal.
I honestly think because of like previously with the coronavirus, people just don't care anymore.
No.
And it's very
That's part of it, fatigue.
Most of our neighbors too, I don't even think know about it.
They don't.
Which is very upsetting.
Yeah, and it just
Oh,
so,
yeah,
there we go.
That's this is the video.
Yeah, my God, look at that.
Oh.
Yeah. It gets even worse.
Those are definitely chemicals. Holy crap.
Yes. And they're settled on the bottom, which is where you mentioned
the Ohio River Basin. Well, I was actually investigating this because I guess I have to investigate to see for my
on your own. Yeah.
But I guess this chemical, it has a tendency to sit at the bottom of things like this, as you see when you stir up the water.
Oh my God! Look at
Ohio
that.
River Basin gets their raw water from the bottom of the Ohio Basin. So what? Is it in there? Is it at the bottom? Or is this going into our tap water? I don't know.
But all the local news outlets are like, it's fine.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
But that does not look fine.
That's not fine. I'm not comfortable drinking that. We've been drinking bottled water exclusively since this has happened because I don't want to put that in my body.
Yeah. What is that going to do to me?
Exactly.
It can kill you. I mean, if that's
chloride. And if not now, maybe 20 years down the line.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, these are all volatile chemicals. We have what? So vinyl chloride, hydrogen chloride, carbon monoxide, phosgene, and other compounds. These are all part of what was in this contaminated burn and dump. That's what's in the air. That's what's in the water. These are all very dangerous chemicals, and there's just absolutely no way that they've just all of a sudden disappeared. Okay, the evacuation's off, and there's no way they're staying in a 1 mile radius. This is going to have tremendous effects, and we need to get answers from both the government and from Norfolk Southern. None of this is acceptable.
Definitely.
So,
absolutely.
Are there any thing that's coming around in your area that activists are going to glom onto, whether it's like trying to get an attorney to do a class action lawsuit, other forms of protest? What is the consensus right now for folks that want to do something?
I haven't heard anything formal yet. But I do know that people are stirring on Facebook. So I'm hoping to see if there's some kind of activism, because I'll be right up there with my sign.
Yeah, definitely, definitely will be
as far as right now, I'm not aware of anything at the moment being organized currently.
So I want to read. So Eric, he's a doctor that I follow on Twitter. He's been very good about COVID, but he knows lots of science stuff. So I follow him and I appreciate his comments on these things. But he had a tweet about this that I want to read. It says, "My God, a newly public document says potentially contaminated soil was not removed, a critical step to be quickly so that toxic materials are not further dispersed into the environment and into the groundwater every time it rains."
Oh, goodness.
So so what he's basically saying is that they should have been removing the topsoil that has the contamination. The chemicals are definitely going to be in the topsoil. There's no two ways about that.
Definitely.
And if they had been more proactive in their safety measures, they would have been digging out and removing that contaminated soil. But they haven't done that. And now the rain, will absolutely carry the toxins.
And it's been raining a lot
It
here
is raining
too.
right now,
Yeah, it's
actually,
raining
as we
right now.
speak.
And also around East Palestine is a major agricultural.
People depend on the livestock. People depend on the crops. People hunt here in the winter because these people, they don't have much, and they need this land. They need this to sustain, and you've poisoned it. You've poisoned their livelihoods, their sustainability.
So he went on to say, cleanup and monitoring of the site could take years. Kurt Kohler of the Ohio EPA said on February 8th, vowing that after the emergency response, the Ohio EPA is going to remain involved through our other divisions that oversee the long-term cleanup of these kinds of spill. Okay, sure, I'm not buying
Yeah,
it right
it's like, where have you been? Like, it's been like weeks. Like, where have you been?
In a document sent to the EPA and recently made public, Norfolk Southern contacted in regards to the cleanup efforts, did not list soil removal among completed activities. Removal of soil that has come into contact with hazardous chemicals is a key cleanup action at spill sites. Contaminated soil will continue to leach contaminants both into the air and down into the surrounding ground and groundwater. So, this is very bad. This
definitely. And obviously, like the livestock, like they eat the grass.
Yeah.
And they're constantly
it's all
interacting
connected. It's a butterfly effect, right? All of
exactly.
The ecology of this is quite large. It's not going to stay in any one thing. And then if they slaughter that cattle and it gets eaten by someone else, all those contaminants, those volatile organic compounds will be present.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for them to say that this is safe is just wrong. It's just not.
No, this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
Exactly. It just feels like it's just going to balloon out from this, and I'm nervous about the future. What is this going to look like for us and the surrounding area?
Right. And where are people going to go if they are like, actually, it's not safe? Yeah. And it's a very poor area. People can't just get up and leave.
No,
just doesn't work that way.
I actually saw somebody on Twitter make that comment.
Yeah, has it been frustrating for you?
And it's like, no, you can't just move.
It's funny. You were checking the East Palestine tag on Twitter, and people are listing their houses on Twitter, trying to get out of there. But like, who's going to buy that house?
The Toxic Avenger.
There, yeah.
Does everybody know who the Toxic Avenger is? That's who's going to buy all the houses.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, people that want a third arm, maybe.
Yeah, little B movie humor there.
Yeah.
No, but it becomes impossible, right? So this is an impossible situation. There's nobody that's going to buy the properties. You can't move unless you sell the properties because you don't have the money to move without selling the property.
Exactly.
So no, these folks are trapped in a situation that is incredibly untenable. And as far as I'm concerned, Norfolk Southern needs to come to the table with far more than a handful of a couple $100 bills, which is all they've given thus far.
Yeah, and they didn't even show
now
up.
they're not even doing that.
And now they're not even doing that, right?
Yeah, and they didn't even show up to the town meeting that was going on because they were too scared of these.
Yeah,
poor
we're
people.
scared.
We feel.
Yeah,
we're scared.
It's awful. Yeah,
it's bad. I mean, maybe you should be scared because of what you did and you have no remorse for it, but that doesn't change the fact you still need to be held accountable.
They're scared that they're going to get yelled at, but instead the poor mayor gets yelled at who didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Well, and it's just he's sort of just desperate for information, which I feel like he's just like channeling the feelings of so many, where it's like, and when you see your mayor just kind of going like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a huge federal failure.
Things like this don't happen in small towns, so incredibly overwhelming for everyone, and I'm especially him. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to him.
Yeah, and everyone in East Palestine, definitely.
Absolutely.
So next steps is basically to try to get more information and then to be able to trust that information. I don't think that information is going to come from either the EPA or Norfolk Southern. So potentially maybe an independent body will come in to do some investigation, some testing of water, testing of soil, whatnot.
Yeah, we're hoping that happens very soon.
We're hoping for something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, ladies, do you know, because we asked our other gal, we're going to ask you too, are you aware of any donation site that has been set up for folks that want to donate to help the folks out that are going through this right now? I know there's a lot of people that are looking to donate money. Do you have any idea of anything set up? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet. I've seen a couple of cash apps from individuals, but nothing major at the moment. No.
Yeah, no.
All right, somebody needs to set that up.
They do, right? Gotta get on that.
So everybody's like, where do I give? Where do I give? And there's like,
right.
Hopefully something soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right, party words, ladies.
I just hope things end up some semblance of okay. I don't know.
Yeah, and
at this point, things are looking very grim and very scary.
And if you're scared and you're angry and upset, we're here with you. You're not alone, and
we're just down the street.
Keep screaming as loud as you can until somebody hears you. That's what we're doing. So
yeah, definitely.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you so much for
having
you.
100%.
Really,
and
really
keep in touch with us and let us know of any updates that you have.
Yes.
Please,
definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you for
ladies,
doing
thank
this.
you so much. Yeah,
Best wishes.
man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we've heard from folks that are not in the, the ground zero radius, but a little bit further out, and they're having health problems too. There's no way this thing is going to be contained into a 1 mile radius. That's just not possible. That's not how it works.
This sounds totally fine for humans, except for literally every human we talk to. I'm sure everyone else is 100% fine. Just every single person we talk to. It's amazing, the just cognitive dissonance, and it's just it's intentional. It's intentional ignorance on behalf of the rail companies, on behalf of the corporate media, on behalf of the government. This is just a systemic failure beyond words. And this is par for the course. This is par for the course.
It's become our new normal. It's becoming normalized to have. It needs to stop.
When you have a country set up the way the United States is set up, there's just certain thresholds you're not able to meet. And the really frightening thing is all those basic thresholds are what you're supposed to have in a country.
Yeah. Our checks and balances are completely gone. Yeah, there's nothing being checked.
Why do we have a country if we can't have a decent federal response when a disaster like this happens? Right. Why do we have a country if we have no idea how to remotely handle something like a pandemic? Why do we have it's just the list goes on and on. All of these systemic failures.
They've been gutted because all these things have been gutted by design by the billionaire class. I'd say since the mid 1970s, we've been moving in this direction, right? Little by little. And now there's no checks or balances. It's a slow boil. The frog
water's
in the water.
bubbling over that. It's bubbling over now. All right, we got a few more chats, and then we got to transition over to right-wing insanity. Roger Meadows, what's up? Senator Vance, Senator Brown, do what Senator Baucus did for Libby and get your constituents M4A using 1881A of the Social Security Act. They could do that. Biden could have done that. They're sure not going to do it, but yeah, they could. Screen Arts Media, they all need new land and houses. Railroad executives will give up their homes. Yeah, I feel you. Robin Bennett, what's up? Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. And then Roger, we heard from you over on the Rockfin too. Thank you for the Rockfin tip. And you say in 2008, we missed our chance to enforce antitrust on the banks in 2020. Yep.
Right.
We missed our chance to enforce antitrust on the pharmaceutical industry. I'll add, even though it's not in your comment, we missed our chance to enforce antitrust in the digital space. It looks like we're going to miss our chance to enforce it on the rail. Yep. You know what? Yeah. At this point, I'm past breakup. It's time for nationalization, says Roger, with the intent in the future to transition ownership to the workers to cooperatize. That'd be great. That'd be something. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Roger, for the super chat contribution. Thank you to Roger Meadows, thank you to Arlene Chambers. Thank you to Robin Bennett. Thank you to Roger Meadows again. Thank you to Melissa H., John Ramsey, Despos Fleisch, Tony D., Eleanor Aquitaine, and Tony D. again. Grinning Guy says capitalism is horrifying. A frickin' men to that. And Jeff Anderson, what's up, buddy? Let's be clear. Status Coup is the only media outlet looking at this honestly. Thank you very much for that, Jeff Anderson.
Appreciate that, yeah.
And we're going to turn
We're
it over
trying
to
wait, before you go, Ron. So let's bring, Right-Wing Insanity Report coming up at the top of the hour. Today, our guest is Steve Monacelli, who is a fantastic investigative journalist. You've seen his work in Rolling Stone, Texas Observer, and a few others. We are going to talk about some right-wing insanity at the border. But before we do, Steve, why don't you come on in? I want to transition our story about East Palestine today with a right-wing insanity story on East Palestine. So because the government is not there and helping people, and because Norfolk Southern could obviously not give two shits about helping the people that are suffering from this economic and environmental disaster, who do you think showed up in East Palestine this past weekend? Anybody? Patriot Front.
Fucking kidding me?
I'm not fucking kidding you. So, Colin, can you put up on the screen part of that video clip I sent you? So, Patriot Front was in East Palestine handing out water and recruiting people to become neo-Nazis. Hashtag shit you can't possibly make up. Is that?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Is that them?
Yeah, they put
That's
a little
them?
clip. Yeah, that's them right there.
That fire is just how they travel.
That's fire is how they travel. Of course, they blurred out their faces as they're handing out water.
Oh, and guys, I didn't introduce you. Guys, listen up. This gentleman over here helping us out, this is Matt. He's with White.
Why do they have all kinds of tape on their sign? Is it because did it have like some horrible, hateful thing prior, so they covered it up and put free water? That's what we're doing this time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Free water.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Oh, our pleasure. Yeah, that way. Oh. Okay. You're very welcome.
Boo.
We're gonna get you a case too. Okay. If you know anyone that needs water, we're going to get some more. So
okay, great.
Let them know.
Oh no, just put it yeah. Put it off the trunk and put it for you. Oh, does she want to? Right here?
Is there anything more on Brown for 2023 than Patriot Front in East Palestine handing out water? These folks don't know who Patriot Front is. They don't know. But, they're going to give them water, and then they're going to hand them some, stop white genocide flyers and, call it a recruitment event. But this actually happened this weekend.
What a sad state of affairs. Yeah. That's where we're at. Does hate water still hydrate you? Next at 11.
All right, folks. I wanted to just share that as a transition. Steve, welcome. We have so much to talk about today, and I'm really excited about your recent reporting on the right-wing border insanity. It's sort of been lost in the news cycle, but this is very important stuff. So let's take a look at your reporting that just came out in the Texas Observer. Colin, can we put that up? If I can find, where's my link to it? Hang on. Hold that thought. There it is. Okay, right-wing reps promote racist conspiracy theories in the border crisis. So there was a meeting by the GOP that was held on the border crisis. They're basically talking about fentanyl being brought in by the Mexican cartel. They're using that as sort of a gateway to talk about limiting migration once again. They want zero migration, zero immigrants, not legally, not illegally, just zero. That's the end goal, right? I'd say actually maybe the end goal is to start deporting people as well. So Steve, talk us through a little bit about your reporting.
Sure. So after the House became Republican in majority, we've been hearing a lot about these ridiculous committee hearings of a variety of issues. And as you mentioned, one of them, which has been somewhat lost in the media, which maybe is ultimately a bit of a good thing, is what they are describing as Biden's border crisis.
Right.
So the one that I followed was part one. If they've had a part two, frankly, I've missed it. I
don't
saw
think it's
enough.
happened yet. Yeah, I saw.
I saw enough. And so what it really amounted to was what I think anybody who's been paying attention to right-wing rhetoric around immigration, it wouldn't be surprised by this. It was that, one, the border is completely unsecure. Two, that a bunch of drugs are coming over and that it is illegal immigration and an insecure border that is actually responsible for it. And that this is why, we need to basically crack down on a variety of forms of immigration and more or less get rid of asylum. I mean, that seems like what is the end goal here, is to basically stop the flow. But during this discussion, at least from the Republican side, there's very little mention of the context of like, what does this really look like over the past few years? Yes, there are record-breaking encounters at the border, but they don't really say much about why, what's driving that, or how we actually stack up compared to other countries. Many people may not realize that, we've seen only an 81% increase, roughly, at least between 2019 and 2021, in encounters at the border and asylum seekers, whereas, places like Costa Rica saw 368%, Mexico saw 559%, Colombia saw 914%. So, we're not even facing the brunt of this. And yet, Republicans want to cast this as just this, invasion of criminals, which, we can get into why that's completely bogus in a second, but the stats just don't make any sense. No, they don't.
No, they don't. In fact, I have a video of a little clip that we put together of part of the meeting. Let's go ahead and play that so folks can get a taste of that. That is the video from the hearing. If we can put that up, Colin.
Which what's the title of it?
Video from the hearing.
What you titled it in the email?
Yeah.
Give me one second.
That's okay. Live TV. And then we're going to play Maxwell Frost pushback, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, so, while he's pulling that up for context, there are some relevant stats in terms of how drugs get across the border. And this is a pretty astonishing statistic. Over 90+% of smuggled narcotics are carried by American citizens through official ports of entry. So most of the drugs that are coming into the United States are being smuggled. Yeah, they're not being smuggled by illegal immigrants or asylum seekers. To be very clear, they're coming through our ports of entry, which has historically been the case. And then second, when it comes to the alleged criminality of immigrants, conviction rates of all immigrants are lower than native-born Americans, and whether they're undocumented or otherwise.
Right.
So the instances in which there have been either alleged or convicted crimes perpetrated by immigrants and sensationalized, they happen at a fraction of the occurrence of normal citizens, American citizens, regardless of race. It's a pretty just disingenuous representation of the picture.
I agree, because they're trying to make it about criminalization because that's the only way they can actually get their argument sold to the general public, right? If they just say we're racist and we don't want brown and black folks in our country, it's not going to bode well for them. So, and they know that. So they're looking for a way to reframe things. I want to play this because it's focused. Colin, do you have it yet? Because it's about fentanyl. And I want to bring this up because obviously fentanyl is an American pharmaceutical, right? That is where it originated. This is not developed by the cartels.
So I was in McAllen a few years ago, and I was leaving at the airport, and there were people with manila envelopes getting on flights. They had just been processed, and the manila envelope is what is their ultimate court date. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how do they get on a plane if they don't have ID? How do they go through security?
That would be a question for ICRO, sir, because they make all those arrangements with the airlines.
Okay, but I mean, these individuals very likely do not have ID, but they're allowed to use their paperwork, their court date as their ID to get through security in McAllen. That's my understanding.
They have certain documents with them, and they use those documents to get their travel documents.
So whereas I have a federal, I either have a driver's license or military ID, that gets me through security, but these individuals who have just come into the country illegally requesting asylum are allowed to not show ID to get on planes. Is that right?
I'm not aware of what they would use, sir.
Okay, so Heritage Foundation's oversight project did a study of illegal aliens that were released from DHS custody. And just in January of 2022, they traced the individuals that were released to 431 separate congressional districts. All but 4 congressional districts are receiving individuals that have been processed from the southern border and are here illegally waiting their hearing. I just find that to be pretty shocking. But again, I'm out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Shocking that people are waiting for their asylum hearing in states and that they came in legally with paperwork that he just doesn't like. I mean, this is the tone. So the reason I picked this clip, because it really sets the tone of where these guys are going, I think.
Correct. Part of the narrative is that, the federal government is trying to sneak people in through this asylum system and distribute them across the United States. And the allegation there being that Democrats are trying to basically, rig the demographics in their favor, which is frankly, an astonishing assumption that, you don't think any of these folks are ever going to want to vote for you were that conspiracy to even really be true.
Right.
When what it's really a representation of is that the federal government has a system for immigration and sort of management that extends all across the country.
Right.
And states have taken part. I mean, we've had even controversy about the quality of housing for unaccompanied migrant youth in Dallas. It was pretty actually appalling. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were smuggling these people here to permanently place them, through this sort of backdoor system. And the reality is, most of the asylum seekers in the grand scheme of things are waiting in other countries.
Right. Right. So I mean, it's just sort of the way they frame it. So I want to talk a little bit about Maxwell Frost because he was in this meeting and he gave a really fiery pushback against some of the GOP talking points that were being flung around. So let's go ahead and play that clip.
It's unfortunate that this hearing started off with a ton of hyperbole and posturing, saying that President Biden and his administration have created the worst border crisis in American history. That isn't about oversight. It's about stoking the fears of immigrants and those seeking asylum. And it's something I take personally as a son of a Cuban refugee. Look, for many folks around the country who might only watch far-right media or just listen to even some of the folks on this committee, I'm curious, Chief Chavez, when President Biden took office, did your agents stop enforcing the border and just allow everybody to come in, thus creating what we hear here is an open border? Did that happen when the president took office?
Sir, thank you for your question. The answer is no, sir.
Okay,
we
thank you.
continue to enforce policy and laws.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Chief Modlin, when President Biden took office, did the border just open and did y'all stop enforcing your policies?
Also, thank you for your question, sir. I can tell you this is the 5th administration I've worked for, starting with the Clinton administration, and Border Patrol agents do their job every day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Look, as y'all probably realize by now, a lot of these hearings are not really about solutions. They're about politics. And for me, I believe solutions must be rooted in facts.
So he's like holding this whole thing to task, which I thought was great that he was doing that. I wanted to turn to Tom Tiffany of Wisconsin because he was getting into this whole fentanyl argument again, right? So it's about the fentanyl. Americans are dying of fentanyl. It's coming from Mexico. But they haven't really made this connection for me that it's immigrants coming over these various border not the legal ones where we know the cartels are smuggling from, but all of these other migrants that are just fleeing from war-torn countries or from environmental issues, whatnot. Help me here.
Well, one of the strategies that they've used to sort of build this narrative up is calling certain witnesses who will kind of do their bidding for them. I mentioned one of them in my piece, who is a sheriff. He happens to be affiliated with the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a fringe ideology and group that promotes this idea that sheriffs at the county level have this unique power to interpret the Constitution, which gives them this really convenient role to play whenever, they want to kind of push their ideology.
Right.
Basically, they say that, they can arrest anybody who they want.
Yeah,
so,
they're above the law, in my opinion. They think they're above
They
the law.
are the law.
They are the law. There you go.
So, this guy, Dennells is his last name, sheriff of Cochise County in Arizona. He gets brought up, and they basically ask him, if he agrees with the reports that increased fentanyl distribution isn't tied to the illegal border crossings. And he's like, no, the criminal cartels are exploiting the border. So it's always this, vague statement. He just claims criminal cartels are exploiting the border, which, to be clear, there probably are instances of cartels exploiting the border for reasons. But in the grand scheme of things, it is a red herring. It is not where the problem is really.
It's not where the
coming
fentanyl's coming from. Yeah.
Well, and to be clear, cartels are probably responsible also for bringing fentanyl in, with American citizens' help and through
100%.
official court. But
Yes.
that is a conflation of
Right.
these issues.
Right. That's exactly right. The migrants that they're trying to keep out they're two different separate pools of individuals here. And you're right. They're making a conflation because they need to be able to make this argument to get it off the ground and to get the general public to buy into it. So I want to talk about John Tanton for a second. John Tanton is an old school racist. He's no longer with us, but his legacy still is. He is the guy that started FAIR, which is not Fair in Reporting, but FAIR the Immigration. Another organization called the USA Numbers, but he's basically, a neo-Nazi, a eugenicist guy that wanted to. In fact, Colin, let's put up some of. I had done a piece on John Tanton years back where I got some FOIA requested documents from John Tanton. One of them was, if we can put them up, Colin, they were attached to the email. Yeah, there we go. So these are basically documents where he's basically saying, let's get rid of birthright, let's get rid of all immigration, here this guy's saying, forget it. There's no way that's ever going to happen. You want to change the Constitution. But that's what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to change the Constitution to get rid of birthright. Anyway, this guy is a real serious bigot, and his tentacles are still with us. I know, for example, Trump had appointed at least 9 different people, including Julia Kirshner, who was running the DHS for a while. They were all ex-FAIR employees. So let's see what FAIR posted about this on Twitter. I just wanted to give some background information on John Tanton for this to make sense, folks. So FAIR says the fentanyl crisis is being driven by Biden's open border agenda, turning every town into a border town. Every town's a border town now. So can we pull that one up, Colin? It's the video where Kathy McMorris is speaking.
Border crisis, the fentanyl crisis that's been driven by President Biden's open borders agenda. It's putting Americans all across this country at risk, turning every town into a border town. More people than ever are dying from fentanyl poisonings. Most heart-wrenching is that fentanyl is an attack on the young generation. The number one leading cause for death for Americans between ages 18 and 45 is fentanyl poisonings. Last month, in my hometown of Spokane, Washington, law enforcement from Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the Spokane Police Department seized 35 pounds of meth and 50,000 fake pills believed to be laced with fentanyl. It takes just one pill to kill.
Okay, this is true, right? People are dying from fentanyl. A lot of people are dying from fentanyl, and it's very dangerous. But that is because of the Sackler family, not because of migrants from Central America.
Yeah, I mean,
am I crazy for saying that?
If you didn't just wake up yesterday and have no history of the world accessible to you, you would understand that since 2006, Spokane County had, like not even just since 2006, but like they've had an opioid problem for a long time. And that started before fentanyl became the number one opioid that was distributed illicitly and, was a cause of death. There were other forms of illicit opioids that were destroying communities. And so, to act as though, this is just a suddenly new problem that has only existed under the Biden administration is disgustingly disingenuous.
Yeah.
And, it is a problem. Fentanyl smuggling is a problem.
Yeah. And
but
the Mexican cartels are definitely dealing fentanyl. Just to clarify, that is absolutely true too. But
yes, but this has a deeper history. Yes.
Right.
And, we've failed to treat this as a public health issue for decades at this point.
Right.
So to lay it sort of at the responsibility, lay the responsibility at the feet of your political opponents is a pretty ghoulish thing to do.
It's incredibly ghoulish and disingenuous. So initially, Republican Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, our favorite villain, proposed that each meeting begin with the pledge. In response, Democratic Representative David Cicilline of Rhode Island proposed an amendment that the pledge cannot be led by anyone who has supported an insurrection against the United States. Some Republicans opposed the amendment as unnecessary, saying it politicized the pledge and then implied that definitely the police was a comparably disqualifying offense. Okay, that was just this random thing.
Yeah, so I mean, like that was the beginning of
but
the
it made
hearing.
me
Like,
laugh.
Before it all started, it was a shit show before it was a shit show. I mean, they basically wanted to insert the pledge as, this, what I assume was a representation of their patriotic, love for the country or whatever. And they wanted to make sure that every hearing started with that. And so, of course, there was some concern because in that proposal, there was no restriction on who could lead the pledge. And also in trying to impose a restriction on it, I mean, let's be clear, like the leader of this committee, Jim Jordan, was named as, sort of a pretty important individual by the select committee and, defied subpoenas. And yet here he is, trying to subpoena people to come and answer him. So, it's why I ended the article with the statement, the foxes are in the hen house. This whole thing was just a circus. And it was very clear from the beginning. And it doesn't seem like this is going to go anywhere productive.
Probably not. I want to broaden this conversation out a little bit more. There are a couple of Telegram channels that are run by, I don't know what to call them, vigilantes. They're down at the border and they're acting as if they're vigilante militia groups. They're rounding up migrants when they see them. They're actually living in tents down there. They film it sometimes. They have some sort of relationship with the Border Patrol because you see these guys in their videos that they post where they, are communicating with Border Patrol or they're calling them and letting them know that they found these individuals. So Colin, can you play, do you have those handies? These are the two videos I sent in a separate email. If we could play the first one. I don't think Steve has seen these yet. I don't know, maybe you have. Are you in these Telegram rooms? All right,
no, there's so much going on. I'm not surprised about this at all.
Right. So, but I want people to realize that this is deeper than just our Congress talking about this, right? So the tentacles of this go from the Congress to the Border Patrol, law enforcement, to these vigilante right-wing militias who are literally at the border policing it themselves. And they're being allowed to do that, and they harass these individuals. Do we have it, Colin?
All right, guys. So we just got the live trigger notification. No? Who are you calling? Well, you won't come over here. That's fine. You? Come on. Up. Come over here. You? I can't do nothing with you. You're over there. But this guy right here, how old are you? You got one more there, two more there? You stay? Any weapons? Do any weapons, knives, weapons, drugs? Drugs?
No entiendo.
¿Habla inglés?
Señor, ¿cuántos años aquí? ¿Cuántos años aquí?
Huh? No, I look at your face. This is trafficking. How old is he? He's 20? How old's that one over there? How old's he? Ask him how old the other kid is over there. He looks younger. You can cover your face, but we don't do child trafficking down here, buddy. You're lucky you're on that side of the border, my friend. Whoa.
No.
It's okay. Sit. And your little friend over there. I see you guys.
No other, he says no women or children.
No women or children? You got, how old are you? How old is he right there? You're a child trafficker, aren't you? You're a little punk. You're not allowed to do this no more. I'm not your, no, I'm not your friend. Yeah, you better run and go back. Your shoes? Solo? Him? Get in the car. You? Come on, come with me. They're not going to be climbing over. You climb over me, perro. He'll bite you. He will tear you apart. So you try to climb over.
You want me to leave him out and walk with you, the dog?
You're going to drive up. You shut that drive up, and BP will see me walking up with him. Immigration. They got a big camp over there, and there's a few more running in the background. No habla inglés? Eso bien. Immigration. Just drive up to the port of entry. Go ahead. They can't come. If they come, I have to turn them into. Tu familia? Tu familia?
No.
No familia? Okay. God loves you. Dios? Do Dios? He loves you. God loves you. Okay? God bless you. You don't mean us no harm, and I know that, and I feel that. God bless you, okay? That other guy's bad. I don't know if you understand me, but I think you feel my heart. We'll turn this around. I'm not going to film the agents. Hand off. We don't film agents.
Film 8. So, okay, wait. There's so much here to unpack, Steve, as I'm sure. We don't film agents. He has no problem filming these individual faces that are trying to, just seek out a better life. God knows what they're fleeing. But he won't film Border Patrol agents. And he's clearly working with the Border Patrol agents. So folks that are just coming in, this guy is not a cop. I know some people were wondering that in the comments. No, this guy is a vigilante. He's a right-wing militia guy that's down there at the border. There's a bunch of them down there. They've been staying at a camp down there. This is what they do all week. They harass people trying to get into the country.
Yeah, this is a thing that's been happening for quite some time. There's a really great book I can recommend by a journalist named Patrick Strickland if you're interested in learning more about sort of the history of this kind of stuff. It's called The Marauders. It's all about, sort of far-right militias terrorizing people at the border. And it involves like some really crazy stuff. I won't spoil it for you, but this is unfortunately kind of par for the course.
Yeah. So this particular situation is in Arizona. I know it's happening in Texas as well. So how do you think there's a knowledge of this with the politicians that are trying to push through this border crisis, immigration stuff in Congress? Do they know that this is going on and they're fine with it? Because Border Patrol seems to be okay with it.
So I can't speak with like a ton of specifics, but I can say that there are politicians at various levels that have relationships of a variety of sorts, whether it's sort of handshaking in a photo or, more friendly than that with these type of far-right militias, because these groups tend to try to get the blessing of some sort of authority, whether it's like a
Yeah.
sheriff or, you know, ingratiating themselves with Border Patrol or some elected official at some level.
DHS, possibly ICE, I don't know, but it's really appalling. This has been going on, though. You're right. So this particular Telegram channel has been up and running for 2 years now. So for 2 years now, they have been engaging in these sorts of activities. I think it's being ramped up now. I want to mention one of the things that he kept saying. So we had the fentanyl thing, right? So it's the migrants are bringing fentanyl over the border. That was what this, Biden's border crisis meeting was about with the GOP, right? This guy is claiming that he's trafficking children. Like, he kept saying child trafficking.
Yeah. A lot of sort of right-wing militia type groups will have members that get it in their heads that there are these like pernicious, QAnon type child trafficking schemes going on. In the book that I mentioned, which actually takes place, most of it takes place, if not all of it, in Arizona. There were examples of these sorts of vigilantes, like, throwing accusations that people were helping traffic people. And, that's not uncommon within the broader far right political sphere. Right. The QAnons, whether it's QAnon or otherwise, it's become, a hot button issue that people like to accuse others of. Not to say that there isn't human trafficking going on, but to immediately sort of jump to the conclusion without any sort of understanding. I mean, the guy couldn't even speak a lick of Spanish. It's telling, to say the least.
Exactly. To me, this is a guy that's probably looking for a better life, and now he's being accused of being a human trafficker or bringing in fentanyl, whatnot. But this is the inevitable outcome of this ramped up rhetoric that we've been hearing in the country, right, over the last few years. And I do believe that this is all just a mask for their racism, right? They don't want brown and black folks migrating to the United States. They want a white country. They believe white genocide is a thing. They believe white replacement theory is a thing. You mentioned earlier in the show that they believe that the Democratic Party is trying to change the demographics of the country because they believe that these folks will vote for Democrats and not Republicans. So they think that there's a vast conspiracy that goes along with that.
Yeah.
What happens next, Steve? I mean, it's just crazy.
I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, in the situations involving these sorts of right-wing militia groups, what ends up happening is like someone gets hurt, and for no good reason.
Yeah.
At least that's, the case in the book that I've continued to reference throughout this. It's, it ends up being a lawless sort of situation, and innocent people get caught up in it.
Innocent people get caught up. What parts of your article did we not highlight that you think are important before we move on to the next thing?
I think in the grand scheme of this, we need to understand that this isn't the first time this sort of rhetoric has been used, whether it was in the 1800s talking about Catholics or Chinese or Filipino immigrants. There's been numerous examples of this like nativist rhetoric calling things an invasion, which, typically comes from the perspective of a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mindset. So, whether it's racism or white supremacism or nativism, however you kind of want to package it, it's a strong strain of politics that's existed in our country for a long time and runs really counter to like what makes our country good, frankly.
I agree. I mean, whether people like it or not, we were founded on immigration. We could say we stole land, white people stole land from the natives. That is absolutely the case. But I mean, let's not pretend that everybody here isn't from someplace else at some point, right? That's right. Just, come on.
Right.
I agree with you there. So we have had a really busy week with right-wing stuff this week. So I do, as you know, we do the right-wing insanity roundup for the week. I want to start off with this Marjorie Taylor Greene clip because apparently she thinks Mitch McConnell is a, wait for it, Democrat.
How many people here, and raise your hand if you believe that Mitch McConnell is a Republican? Raise your hand if he's a Republican. Okay. How many people here, raise your hand if you believe Mitch McConnell is a Democrat? Oh my goodness. How about that? Yeah. So Mitch McConnell, he is a rhino. He's worse than a rhino. He has helped Joe Biden pass his agenda.
I mean, Mitch McConnell is an incredibly conservative guy. I cannot believe that the Overton window has moved so far to the right that these individuals think he's a Democrat.
Well, as the saying goes, I'm a proud member of the face-eating leopards party, and I am certain that my face isn't going to get eaten by leopards.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That about sums it up. All right, this next one is Kennedy. I always have to like make sure that people know this. The John Kennedy from Louisiana. So let's clarify that. John Kennedy. He believes that God made pipelines, and they made them pipelines because they're safer than trucks and trains. Let's play this clip.
What do you think of how the federal government has been handling this, and should the Secretary of Transportation be out there talking to folks?
Well, this is why God made pipelines. They're much safer than trucks or trains. Now, I understand this particular chemical could not have been transported by a pipeline. But all you can do is require the truckers and require the railroads to be as safe as they possibly can. But when you can, do it through a pipeline.
I'm guessing that he has some pipeline donators.
I want whatever he's smoking in his pipeline. Like, Jesus, man. Like, you went out of your fucking way to talk about how much you love pipelines.
Which had nothing to do with anything. Like, it was just the weirdest red herring, like pipelines. He's like, I know they don't use these pipelines to move these chemicals, but I'm going to talk about pipelines anyway.
Cool, man.
Cool, man. All right, the next one I have is I'm going to call him Incel Preacher. This is somebody that I was not familiar with until this week. His name is Jonathan Shelley, and he has some nutty stuff to say about women and Antifa and what women should be doing as Antifa.
The last thing we need is for more men to say, like, oh, let's empower women. What has that ever done for America? Are you going to tell me that America's gotten better in the last 100 years by empowering women? All these women judges. I mean, you really think the streets are safer now with all the women cops, women district attorneys, women judges, women governors? That's destroying America. And they're empowering Antifa. And they're empowering all kinds of... They're gambling $1 billion away is what they're doing. It's destroying America. And you know what? Getting sucked into this garbage. There are so many men today getting sucked into this garbage thinking they have to let a woman tell them what to do. You know what? We need men to stand up and put women back where they belong, in the kitchen. Back into the home, raising the family. Why? Because they're better at it than men. You know who's the best at raising children? Women. You know who's the best at cooking? Women. You know who's the best at being women? Women. Make women women again. I'm sick and tired of seeing all these women that are men. It's gross. And you know what? We need some real men. You know who's not good at being a man? Women. Just as bad as men being women, is women being men. Hillary Clinton's not a good dude.
And this guy wonders why he can't get a date, or all 20 of them in the room wonder why they can't get a date. I mean, this is some wild stuff.
Yeah, Freud would have a lot to say.
Freud would definitely have a lot to say. It's really wild, though. But women are empowering Antifa was my favorite line. I'm like...
Okay.
We'll take the Antifa women back to the kitchen. All right, our next guy is white nationalist Dalton Clodfelter, who also has some crazy misogynistic sort of stuff that he said over the last week. Let's play that clip.
Women have a purpose, and women, they need to be molded by the man, and they basically they're like They need to be a blank slate when you meet them. There's no political opinion. There's nothing. It's just natural instinct.
Not even favorite music.
Nope. No favorite music, nothing. They are a completely blank slate when you meet them, if you're looking for a wife. And then you give them that. You know, it's me saying, I believe that the races are different. Oh, okay. I believe that Jews control the world. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. You know, it needs to be like that. It's that type of relationship.
Okay. Cool.
Women aren't even supposed to have their own taste in music. I mean, this is some wild stuff, right?
I mean, like, you can get like a Furby or a Tamagotchi if you just like want like an input-output relationship, but maybe even that's a little too complicated for this guy.
It's a little too complicated for this guy. He's an America First guy, so for folks that don't know who he is, forget his name. I will never play him for you again, but I just was like, that's funny.
Just looks like a very soft person, but let's go on.
Let's move on. So this next clip, I think we have to play like a couple of times, Colin, because each time you look at it, you're going to want to look at a different person and their reaction. Let's go ahead and play that.
If we couldn't begin with a threshold question, to wit, is President Biden woke?
All right. My favorite personal one is the guy down in the front that goes, so this was the press conference at the White House press briefing. And so this guy says with a straight face, to wit, is Biden woke? And he expected the rest of the press corps to basically be like, yeah, great question, dude.
I mean, like, what if someone like chased you around with a shovel? I don't know. That'd be crazy. Like, next question, man.
Exactly. It's just completely wild stuff. I do want to talk about also. So right now we basically have the Proud Boys are on trial. Enrique Tarrio, that their trial has been going on. I think it's in the 4th day now. But there was an interesting thing that came out today from the transcripts of the trial. Let's put this up. It's the Miami New Times, Colin. So who is the Miami crypto queen accused of devising the plan to overthrow the election? So if we remember back, there was a document that was shared by the Proud Boys. It was called 1776 Returns. And it was basically a map, a roadmap of how the insurrection was going to go. So apparently this originated with an ANCAP. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. These are extreme libertarians. They deal with crypto coin. They are anti-government, whatnot. So I want to, can we pull this up, Colin? The Miami New Times? There we go. Thanks. All right. So she was once an obscure cryptocurrency promoter in Miami. Now she's at the heart of a national intrigue, accused of providing a far-right group with a detailed plan to overturn a presidential election. Erica Gemma Flores is known in Miami's cryptocurrency circles as a venture capitalist and fierce advocate for digital currency. She founded the city's Bitcoin Center, a tech education hub in the downtown area, and supported Mayor Francis Suarez's efforts to prop the city up as the country's crypto capital. She has described herself as the godmother of the Miami crypto scene. God help us all. I want to scroll down, though, to the messages. 1 week before the January 6, 2021 insurrection, the report states that Flores provided then Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio with a document titled 1776 Returns, which outlined a plan to storm government buildings around the Capitol, including the House and Senate office buildings and the U.S. Supreme Court. The document is a core component of the seditious conspiracy charge for which Tarrio and other members of the Proud Boys are currently on trial in D.C. in the Washington, D.C. court. Text messages introduced as evidence in the trial show correspondence in which Erica transmits the document to Tarrio around 12:50 p.m. on December 30th in 2020. Uh-oh, hang on, I lost my place. All right. When describing the messages, wait, hang on. I think I skipped a spot. There we go. Text messages introduced, transit 2020. Okay, if you don't like my plan, let me know. I will pitch elsewhere. One message to Tarrio reads, but I want you to be the executor and benefiter of my brilliance. When describing the messages, federal prosecutors in the Tarrio trial have referenced the sender as Erica Flores, noting that she pleaded the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer questions about the 1776 returns document after receiving a subpoena last year. She has not been charged in the case. This is some wild stuff. One witness, prosecutors say, described Flores as a former girlfriend of Tarrio. Samuel Armez, president of the Florida Blockchain Business Association, testified before a congressional committee that he believed the 1776 returns plan was derived from a wargaming document that he had shared with Flores, whom he knew through the Florida cryptocurrency community. So basically, she pilfered the plan from this other guy who was a gamer, and it was about wargaming. It wasn't supposed to be anything real, right? This is like some wargame document. And then she decided she was going to turn it into an actual plan to commit capital insurrection, and she gave it to Enrique Tarrio. That's basically what's happening here. Have you been following this Proud Boy trial?
Yeah, I read a bit about this earlier today, and there's a crypto fascist joke, but it's too on the nose, right? Like, geez, you could not have picked a better person to be thrown into the mix, someone who's deep into crypto coin. Because it's something that I think a lot of people have observed anecdotally in terms of the affinity, in terms of the interest in crypto coin and stuff with some of these far right groups.
Right.
Very funny turn of events.
I thought so too. So anarcho-capitalists, I want to talk about this group for a moment because you're right. This is something that doesn't get discussed a lot. There was that HBO documentary series that came out and they called it The Anarchist, and everybody was kind of like, yeah, I know, cringe, because you expected to watch the show and see some sort of, left version of what we would traditionally consider to be an anarchist. What we got instead was a deep dive into the ANCAP world, which is, these are anarcho-capitalists, right? So these are very far-right libertarians. I would say that Peter Thiel is of this group. He's somebody that's advocated for seasteading. So if we seastead corporations in the sea on these platforms, then we get out from under the wing of government, right? No government laws will apply because we're no longer part of the country. So they have some very extreme positions. They are generally pretty anti-government positions. And these are traditionally not, things that people would put on the right, the far right. But it is definitely a growing group of folks, and they do buy heavily into cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and I mean, there's various flavors of this, and one tendency typically just thinks that the only thing the government should do is protect their private property. So it's like the state should only be cops, more or less.
You're right, the state.
and then like the judges that rule on those sorts of cases and stuff. So yeah, that's certainly not what most people would consider to be like what ideologically would normally be called anarchism or even libertarianism in other parts of the world, because that word has become changed and adopted by different folks in the United States.
Right. And so interesting stuff. And at one point, I think the article mentions that she was actually a delegate or related in some way to the Rand Paul run for president, which sort of fits. Anyway, I thought this was an interesting because it wasn't something that I had expected to see this week. And it kind of was like, okay, here we have an ANCAP. ANCAPs aren't getting discussed very much, and maybe this is something that we should be paying more attention to. I don't know that they're dangerous, perhaps. The other part of the equation is that a lot of the sort of white nationalist neo-Nazi groups like crypto as well, because it allows them to engage in some of their things that they want to do behind closed doors that they don't want a paper trail on, right? Whether it's, buying weapons, ghost guns, whatnot, so things of that nature. So crypto is definitely has a part to play in right-wing extremist world. That's not to say that everybody that likes crypto, uses crypto, whatever, is part of that. That's definitely not the case, but it's certainly part of this conversation with that. Let's see. What is our next thing? I know I'd sent. Okay, so wanted to play. There we go. Another one on the Proud Boys, because again, we're in Proud Boy trial. So this is on the AP article. So now we're gonna. What I love about this trial is we're hearing about a lot of stuff that we didn't know about before. It turns out that there was a police officer. Shockingly, there was a police officer that was feeding information to Enrique Tarrio. Yeah, so this came out today too. So a police officer frankly provided Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio with internal information about law enforcement operations in the weeks before other members of his far-right extremist group stormed the U.S. Capitol, according to messages shown Wednesday at the trial of Tarrio and his 4 associates. A federal prosecutor showed jurors a string of messages that Metropolitan Police Lieutenant Shane Lamond and Tarrio privately exchanged in the run-up to the mob's attack of the Capitol on January 6th. Lamond, an intelligence officer, wait for it, he's also an intelligence officer, for the city's police department, was responsible for monitoring groups like the Proud Boys when they came to Washington for protests. Less than 3 weeks before the January 6th riot, Lamond warned Tarrio that the FBI and the U.S. Secret Service were all spun up, quote unquote, over talk on an InfoWars internet show that the Proud Boys plan to dress up as supporters of President Joe Biden on the Democrats' inauguration day. And if we remember back, he did say this in his I can't remember now if it was his Telegram room or what, but Tarrio did say, dress up in plain clothes, don't wear the yellow and black colors. We want to sort of look like we are blending in, or we're Antifa, I think he said even in another one. So that is definitely the case. Justice Department prosecutor Connor Mulrow asked a government witness, FBI Special Agent Peter Dubrowski, how common is it for law enforcement to disclose internal information in that fashion? I've never heard of it, Dubrowski said. Tarrio was arrested in Washington 2 days before the Capitol attack and charged with burning a Black Lives Matter banner taken from the historic Black church during a protest in December of 2020. He was released from jail before the riot and wasn't in Washington on January 6th. So he wasn't in Washington because of that arrest. And he had been arrested, if we recall, he had been arrested with 2 magazines and some other things in his backpack. So here we have a police officer with the Metropolitan Police Department basically sharing intelligence with Tarrio in the run-up to the Capitol insurrection.
Doesn't seem good.
It doesn't seem good, but I don't even think it's shocking either. No. there have been, I know here in Los Angeles and surrounding areas, I'm looking at my board right now. There's 2 Riverside Sheriff's Department guys that are Proud Boys member. There was Rick Fitzgerald, who was in the Fresno Police Department. He's a Proud Boy member. I know of one LASD, one LAPD guy. So there's definitely infiltration of our law enforcement department by the Proud Boys. There probably still is. And not just the Proud Boys. A lot of folks forget that the Oath Keepers also, came from law enforcement, right? That was started by the constitutional sheriffs, which you brought up earlier. The whole point was that they wanted people that were trained in law enforcement, so they went after those folks, and also ex-military.
Yeah, it's not a new phenomenon, to say the least, that there are white supremacist sympathizers or sort of far-right sympathizers within law enforcement at various levels. I was on a panel at all places hosted by the Cato Institute, interestingly enough. And on that panel was a former FBI agent who had done some undercover work in white supremacist organizations. And
Mike German?
Yes, Mr. German. And he said...
We've had him on the show. He's great.
Yeah. He said, there were things that he was told he really shouldn't talk about with too many people and should very much limit the access to the information with people in the Bureau because there was, sort of known sympathies and known elements in the Bureau that might, have.
So these would be other FBI agents that had sympathies towards the right-wing extremists.
It certainly sounded like that's what he was saying, right? And that it's been a known issue for a while, and so that's, not necessarily surprising. I mean, but he's also very much a straight shooter in the sense that he thinks that, ideologically categorized surveillance is a bad thing. And that we should focus on, or rather, law enforcement should focus on the focus on criminality, right? Like other people focus on ideology and the history, and there's scholars and stuff you can look to understand that. But when it comes to the role of like the federal government, if they're, doing surveillance of an ideological group like white supremacists, they're probably also doing surveillance against like Black Lives Matter groups, which there was that news that came out recently where that was exactly what was going on in Denver in a very not so good way. So
they honeypotted these activists, which makes it even more unethical. It's
Yeah.
not only did they have an informant that was telling them, this guy was literally honeypotting them and trying to egg them on into doing things. Like,
right,
which is
you know,
really
there's
unethical.
incitement or other forms of, you know, getting people to do things and showing up with the bag of goodies and planting an idea in their head. That's been a known problem at various forms of law enforcement for decades. And so, yeah, I don't think we should be surprised by this, but it's very good that it's coming out. And
It is.
you know,
It is good that it's coming out, and it sort of makes sense that, you know. So the day I want to talk about the day of January 6th for a second here, because we would see video from the day where there were some Metropolitan Police officers letting the insurrectionists in and saying, "Yeah, go ahead, whatever." Meanwhile, you had other officers that were getting killed, more or less, right? I mean, our historic footage that John Farina shot in that hall, that officer's head was getting crushed in that door because they were, you know, they were bear macing and spraying. Like, we don't have to rehash all of that, but you get the point. So there were some officers that were trying to, like, keep the insurrectionists at bay, and there were others who were like, yeah, come on in, welcome in, guys, let me join you, kind of thing. So I think sort of just gets to the heart of it is that no group is monolithic, right? So within, even that's the case even with law enforcement, the unfortunate reality is that they don't tattle on their own, right, when they should. If you have a police officer that's committing a crime, that's even worse, in my opinion. That's even worse than a criminal committing a crime. You're supposed to be the law. You're supposed to be the good guy. You're supposed to be the gap stop to that. And if you're engaging, like, no, man, it's bad.
Well, on that note, there's something that I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you saw it because it literally just came out in the past 53 minutes. But Texas's Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is, you know, basically our top law enforcement official in many respects, he has been indicted for a long time, right? And this trial has, you know, which has not happened yet, has been, you know, rescheduled and pushed back so many times for various reasons. Well, 53 minutes ago, AP reported that Justice Department officials in Washington have taken over the corruption investigation into Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, removing the case from the hands of the federal prosecutors in Texas who'd long been leading the probe. And this comes after Paxton's office settled with a handful of whistleblowers in the office who had alleged various forms of corruption against him. And he settled with them for over $3 million, which now the legislature of Texas has to take up as a potential appropriation bill so that the taxpayer and the state would actually be the one that would be paying this out. So, yeah, speaking of potentially, you know, people who are responsible for upholding the law, getting investigated for breaking the law and potentially getting their due, it's been a long time coming in Texas, and this would be a really, really interesting development.
Well, yeah, I think we're starting to see things move in that direction and change, which is good. They're not changing fast enough, and I don't know that they will ever change enough, you know, to put it mildly, but it's really been a problem for a long time, and it's what motivates a lot of the civil unrest right now, and it's understandable why people are angry. You know, I was down in Atlanta for Cop City a couple of weeks ago, and this is just one more example. There was, you know, they're charging, it's 18 now, kids with domestic terrorism charges, and none of these kids are domestic terrorists. Are you kidding me? You know, and I actually had talked to Mike German about this, and, you know, Mike's thing was the same thing. He said, no, they should not have these state laws because they're obviously too easy to politicize, which is what's happening. This is the state government trying to just squash the First Amendment, trying to squash political dissent because, you know, 70% of the residents there don't want Cop City to be built. That's an overwhelming majority. You know, one of the kids that I filmed with Colin was just holding a banner and marching that night. He was not part of anything more than that. That is a protected First Amendment right, and yet he is right now at home with an ankle bracelet on and he can't leave because he's facing domestic terrorism charges. It's pardon my French, but it's absolutely fucking insane.
Yeah. Well, and there's a long history of like white supremacist violence and stuff not being labeled domestic terrorism for very interesting reasons, which actually I think are kind of important, because if you start to cross lines where the FBI starts collecting a bunch of demographic data around a bunch of people and starts trying to categorize things as white supremacist domestic violence, like some people may say that's an expedited way to solve a problem, but others would say from a civil rights perspective, that opens the door to all sorts of really bad things. It's a slippery slope. And suddenly, what's being labeled what, and how is that actually really shaking out? Most of this violence gets, prosecuted in terms of like gangs. Well, yeah, they get focused on as like gangs or other things like that. Exactly. So, in this instance, it's horrendous. And, if there were actual, property crimes that the local police or whatever were trying to investigate, I mean, like, the reality is they're probably going to try to do that. And if they got charges on people, they might have a good chance of getting them. But that's a completely different scenario.
That is a completely, okay, pedestrian in a roadway, misdemeanor crime, fine, whatever. You can go down the list of what those things are, but to say that these kids are domestic terrorists is just absolutely an insane infringement on our First Amendment. It should not be happening. This law, it should not even be on the books, yet it is. And you're right. So really important conversation to have, because I don't think people realize this. So the federal government doesn't have a domestic terrorism law. They do not have one for this reason, right? Because it can be politicized. So like what Mike German would say is we have 52 other laws that we can use to charge a domestic terrorist and have him off the streets and not doing domestic terrorism, right? Whether it's gun charges, whether, go down the host of things.
Well, yeah, the reality is anyone can go out and say despicable shit all they want. They can, really say disgusting things and have horrible opinions. But as long as they don't commit violence or commit a crime, like the FBI or law enforcement has no role in investigating and surveilling them. That's just like if they are witness to a crime and then they continue to be like witnesses to minor assaults at protests and stuff, then it might be appropriate for the FBI to be like,
tabs.
Why does this particular group have members that continue to witness white supremacist violence?
Like Adam Waffen division or whatnot. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like maybe there's some interviews to be had there, at least for collecting information, but that's because it would be related to a specific crime. So, we do live in a society, and, for better and for worse, there will always be criminal law and mechanisms for enforcing that. And, the matter is, how do we do that in a more ethical way? And that's a whole other damn conversation.
That is a whole for another day, because we're at the end of the hour and I know you have to jam. But I do want to ask you have a new Protean magazine issue coming out.
Yes.
What's in that?
Great question. So, we are nearly wrapping up the pre-order period for Protean Magazine, which is a nonprofit literary magazine that I publish with a group of people. Here is like one example of one we published. I just happen to have it. This is an Ellie Valley illustration on the cover. Really, high quality, like beautiful illustrations, lots of good essays, fiction, poetry. And so this upcoming issue, sort of using this metaphor of special relativity to examine, a number of different things, like people's, relationships to historical issues, like the gravitational pull of history, all the sort of things that can kind of be discussed within this framework of, this scientific breakthrough that taught us that so many things are relative and based on your perspective in life and how fast or slow things are moving. So it should be a really beautiful issue. We recently revealed the cover, and we've got all of the people that are contributing to it on our fundraiser page, which is on our main website. If you're familiar with Luke O'Neill, he's contributed some fiction to us. So we're really excited. And if you pre-order within like the next 10 days before the end of the month, you can get cheaper, discount. Basically, you can get some special rewards, and you'll know that you'll be helping fund like a network of hundreds of artists and researchers and writers and poets who do really cool liberatory work, and there are no advertisements. So
which is even better.
Go check it out.
All right, on.
Go check it out.
So, I think we have a super sticker. Keep it up. Thank you, Cobb fan, for the $5. Colin, were there other super chats that I need to get to? I don't see any, but all right, well, we'll take the $5. Thank you so much, Cobb fan. Appreciate it. Also, thanks everybody for tuning in today. I know we've been going for 2.5 hours now. We had a long show. We covered East Palestine earlier, And then we had Steve Monacelli on. You've seen his work in Rolling Stone, Texas Observer. Follow him on Twitter. He does a great job covering right-wing extremism in Texas and other states as well. I know you travel. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for everybody for sticking with us. Have a good evening.
Thanks for having me.